What is happening, party people, fellow patriots? Happy Saturday. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend so far. Don't worry. Tonight we're not talking about politics. Tonight we're talking about psychology. Anyway, welcome back to Thirst Trap News.
I'm not your gossip girl, I'm the headline. Truth with a curve, baby, redefine. Welcome to the thirst trap. All the truth looks good in a tight wrap. We talk love, power, soul, and sin. Turn the world on, let the light in. We are the thirst trap news. You'll drink it up, it's the real you. Never trying to thirst news. Where every headline's a revelation.
Hello. Oh, I had a great day. I got to fish. Put my lure in the water for 15 seconds and I caught a little baby catfish. But the trade-off for catching something immediately upon smacking the water is that you don't catch anything again the rest of the session. I lost my lure, fighting something, and then it got stuck. And then, let's see, my bait kept getting eaten. My poor daughter, every time she put her line in the water, her bait got eaten. But that's the way it is learning, you know, the learning curves to fishing. Fishing at the beginning when you're learning can seem so boring, I guess, until you start to realize how rewarding it is, that the patience makes it very rewarding when you do catch something. But anyway, to my friend who hung out with me today, kept me company, thank you. You so helped me with my depression. And much love to you. Okay, so good evening. Let me get in the zone really quick. Zone cometh. Hello, Jack. Yes, I know you are a fan of fishing. Hi, Katie, or Caddy. I don't know. I'll just call you. I was probably Katie, but I'll call you Caddy because it's fun. It's fun. More fun to say. Glad to see you guys with me. Love when the new faces come in and engage with me and come back. It's always a good sign when they come back, when the new faces come back. So, to my lurkers, hello. And without further ado, let's get into it. Like I said, tonight is not about politics. Tonight is psychology. So I think what we're going to do every Saturday, maybe do, I don't know, psychology. But what are we talking about? We're talking about dangerous people tonight. What the hell? Whatever do you mean, Luna? Dangerous people? Please do explain. All right. Hi, Backwater. I'm glad to see that you are here. Those meds, I'm sure, are taking you for a loop. But anyway, some of the most dangerous people you'll ever encounter do not break into your house. They break into your attention. They don't need to stand outside your window anymore. They can stand behind anonymous accounts, fake identities, burner emails, carefully timed messages, years of watching without ever introducing themselves. I call that coward. Most people think stalking is a romance gone wrong. But it's usually something much darker than that, because stalking, in fact, isn't about love at all. It isn't even about hate. It's about ownership and control. The illusion that another human being exists to be observed, manipulated, interrupted, frightened, or psychologically managed. A healthy mind can move on. A stalker cannot. The world becomes organized, or their world becomes organized around someone else's existence. Every post becomes evidence. Every silence becomes a puzzle. Every success becomes a personal insult to them. Every boundary becomes a challenge. And the longer it goes on, the less it becomes about the victim. And the more it becomes about the stalker's entire identity. And that's the tragedy. Imagine waking up every morning and spending years thinking about someone who barely thinks about you. Imagine believing you're invisible while leaving footprints on everything you touch. Patterns, timing, language, behavior. Psychology always leaves a signature. And so tonight we're going to explore the signature of a stalker, both cyber stalking and physical stalking. We're not doing this to create fear. What we're doing is we are creating understanding. Because once you understand the psychology, the illusion disappears. Obsession is not power. And surveillance on someone is not intimacy. Imitation is not a connection with someone. And anonymity has never been the same thing as invisibility. Sometimes the person being watched learns to stop looking over their shoulder because they finally learn to look through the behavior instead. So let's begin. Let me look at the chat. Let's see. Oh, Jack, I didn't realize you're still recovering from your rib injury. That sucks, bro. I'm missing I don't know where my sock went for my mic, my windscreen, my pop filter. So I am using hold on a second. I'm using a sock for my pop filter. That's all I could do in a pinch was find a sock. So I have it secured with my Jake Anderson. If you know, you know. My Jake Anderson bracelet that my daughter bought me. What's up, Q? Good to see you in the chitty chat. You made it just in time before I got into the meat of the material. Just finished my monologue and was checking through the chat. It was explaining how my day was super awesome today. How a friend came in and swooped the day, saved the day, swooped in to save the day. I was feeling so depressed and just like, this is such a weird point in my life. And yeah, it was a really freaking kick-ass day. Told them about how I threw a lure in the river there. And like the second I did it, I caught a catfish. It was pretty dope. But threw it back. It was a teeny weeny needle BB. And, I don't like to keep babies, I am cognizant of the ecosystem. Yes, it was a very good friend. Very good friend. Unexpected friend. So yeah, great day for me. Tomorrow will be lovely. I got to get up early and do the our Human Origins series tomorrow. That's my lingerie and whiskey and a smoke, adults only educational show. So you have to be a subscriber to see that one. But Backwater said, time out, LOL. What? Time out what? What Backwater? I went fishing today. Me and Annabelle went fishing. What's up, MC? Good to see you in the chat too. Says, I hate painkillers, but take them when needed. Totally understand. I can completely relate. Jack says, hey, Q, hope you're doing well and spreading chaos. Q, the chaos master. Now that I got Q on, I'm just going to go ahead and pull him up and make him a mod since I have now gotten whittled down the crowd a little bit. Things got a little funny in recent times. So I down a moderator. So now I have one to replace and one who never shows up ever. Wonder if I should take him off. Anyway, Q, congratulations. You are now on the Troll Patrol. You are mod. You're way cooler anyway. All right. Let's get into the meat of our discussion. Ooh, it is psych night. Saturday psych night. We're talking about stalkers. If you have daughters, listen up closely. If you are a ruminator or an obsessor, listen up closely. Not judging you. I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm here to give the facts. So let's start. All right. So most people imagine a stalker as someone hiding behind a tree, standing outside a bedroom window, or following someone through a parking garage. Sometimes that is true, though. But unfortunately, stalking has evolved because we have the internet now. Backwater says, sniped out. Q says, take FWE's mod power. He needs demoted. He keeps doing the WB backwards for the BW backwater. MC says, love your way, Luna. What do you mean? What are you talking about? What way is that? What way am I? You're a good person taking care of mom, Jack says to MC. Yes, that is very honorable. All right, going back to the topic at hand. I am fighting a queasy stomach. I don't know why. I think it's just my nerves. Because I didn't eat anything bad. I ate eggs, guacamole, and toast just now. Whatever, I'm not even dyslexic. Okay. So anyway, like I was saying, stalking has definitely evolved for sure. It can happen through phones, anonymous accounts, fake identities, repeated messages and emails, people impersonating, pretending to be someone else, constant monitoring of your social media activity or your public activity, or even repeated attempts just to insert themselves into your life despite setting very clear boundaries. And since the technology's changed, you know, it's made it easier. But the problem is that even though the technology's changed, psychology, the way the human mind has not changed. So tonight's not going to be about sensationalizing anything. It's about misunderstanding a mindset. I think a common misunderstanding that many people have about these types of characters. It's the mindset, because stalking isn't simply, you know, someone who just won't leave you alone. I have to relax. Oh my gosh. I don't know what is up with me. I have to remember to breathe while I'm talking. I'm feeling like some kind of energy coming in. And the last time this happened to me, y'all got to watch on camera a spiritual event take place, but hopefully that's not what's happening now. Weird. I feel some kind of negativity, negative energy. Appreciate you, MC. He says, no, I'm just shooting. Love your way. It means good wishes. Thank you so much. Look at this. I get to pin comments now. I have so many funny little, watch this. I have so many funny new things. Watch this. Oh, really? When I want to blame these guys. Ta da 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 da. I also have this. Yeah, that's pretty handy. I also have this. Rant mode activated. And then I have this. rant over, walk away. All right. I'm stalking right now, but in a good way. Stalking products, stalking candy. Yes, Caddy, I have some pretty funny gifts. Q says, my earbud just died. That's probably what you were feeling. Hey, don't be sending no. I don't know. My stomach is like in a ball of knots. Ooh, I don't know why. Maybe it's the topic. Anyway, all right. But yeah, stalking's not just someone who, simply won't leave you alone. It's a pattern of persistent, unwanted attention. And that unwanted attention is being driven by obsession, entitlement, fixation, revenge even, or very simply a very intense need for control. And most people experience rejection and move on. And most people admire someone from afar without crossing boundaries. Most people understand the difference between curiosity and intrusion. A stalker often does not understand those differences. And tonight we're going to explore what psychology tells us about this behavior and why it develops, how it escalates, and why recognizing the warning signs actually matter, especially in this day of the internet and how easy it is for people with just a little bit of tech know-how to breach your firewalls, breach through your safety, breach, anything you do to keep yourself safe online. It's getting easier and easier because understanding the behavior behind stalking is really the best way to reduce the fear because you'll feel, more secure. So let's get into our first video. Grab a drink, grab a smoke, grab a snack, grab your sweetie or grab your imaginary sweetie or the person you wish to be your sweetie. Grab a pillow and pretend you're cuddling with them. And let's watch some pretty good information. Now, just as a disclaimer, I haven't watched, since I was out fishing today, I got stuck in Thor and was in an angry mood because this guy literally vomited out on top of us and I almost died, literally lightning struck 5 feet from me. I felt the crack of the lightning in my body. My heart literally jumped out of my chest. I've never felt that before. I've never been scared like that before so suddenly. And I screamed like a baby, like a Yorkie, like a spoiled London Yorkie. But, yeah, so I didn't have time. So none of these videos I've seen ahead of time. If they don't quite hit the mark, I'm sorry. I'll give my commentary if I disagree with my psychologist hat on. I don't know if all of you know, I am one degreed. So let's get into our first video. You guys know I can blab a little bit way too much. Here we go.
Stalking, roughly 80%.
Can you back it up?
Hey, 42 here. You've seen stalking in movies and on TV. But unless you've had an obvious stalking experience, most of you will probably think that it's something that never happens to you. We think that stalking is something that only happens to other people. But there's a good chance that you've been a victim of stalking. In most cases, however, you will never be able to know for sure. The internet and social media make stalking so easy for the stalker, yet so difficult to identify for the victim. Over 7 million people are stalked in the US each year. But how does a stalker manipulate their prey? What drives them to stalk in the first place? Let's step inside the mind of a stalker and uncover some disturbing psychology. The vast majority of stalking, roughly 80%, is domestic stalking, meaning the perpetrator is someone the victim knows, a friend, family, or most commonly, an ex-partner. Stalking can sometimes be mild or just very well concealed, and thus most stalking victims don't actually realize they've been stalked.
Jack says, stalking really is a potentially dangerous situation. Absolutely, and we're going to get into that.
If you want to assess whether or not you've ever been stalked, simply ask yourself, have you ever received an unwanted gift, or perhaps a series of strange phone calls or anonymous mail? Then, you've probably been stalked. In domestic stalking cases involving ex-partners, the obsessive behaviour usually begins following a breakup, as I'm sure you probably already know. But what's quite interesting is the psychological process that the man or woman in question goes through to begin stalking the other. Stalkers, following a breakup, often report a feeling very similar to the grief felt after the death of a loved one. Stalking usually begins when one person attempts to keep in contact with the ex and they don't reciprocate or, straight up, ignore them. Therefore, they feel as though that person is forever lost to them, similar to a death. The grief this causes can, in some people, trigger a panic response. Many stalkers actually equate it to being remarkably similar to a panic attack. This panic causes them to become obsessed about trying everything they can to re-establish that lost channel of communication. And when you get people with a borderline personality disorder, which is typically diagnosed in around 2% of...
He said borderline personality disorder. Now, borderline personality disorder is commonly misdiagnosed for bipolar, and even autism can show up that way. So borderline personality disorder is very distinct. It can have a lot of bipolar similarities, except with bipolar 1 and 2, you go through months of the mania, months of the down depression where they can't get out of bed. And the mania is so extreme that they can drive like cross country in 3 days without sleeping because their endorphins are so out of whack. With borderline personality disorder, that develops from having the right predisposition from your genetic makeup met with the right environmental stressors to cause a person to be living in such an anxious state for so long that everything becomes life and death during this chronic stress period. And it shapes the brain during childhood around a chronic stress overworked area of the brain. So the brain architecture is altered. So now someone with borderline personality disorder is the signature of that is they think very black and white, very life and death, good versus evil, right versus wrong. There's no gray area. They don't see the spectrum of color or the spectrum of choices in life. And their reactions to problems can be very disproportionate with, it can be really actually, they make mountains out of molehills because everything is life and death. And there's a book called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. That is for the family members or lovers of someone that has borderline personality disorder to help you understand it. And that just the title of it, I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, is like the signature sentence for people with borderline personality. And if you heard that sentence and can relate to that sentence, I'm right there with you. All right, let's continue.
Population, you have a recipe for disaster, because such people will take that obsession to anywhere it needs to go to achieve the goal of gaining their ex's attention once again, even if that involves acts of extreme violence. Unlike stranger stalkers, who we'll talk about in just a moment, domestic stalkers tend to act out impulsively instead of in a premeditated manner. Impulsive behaviour, however, is usually far more dangerous. You can identify when an ex's obsession with you has crossed over into dangerous territory by examining the current state of their life. You see, as a domestic stalker's obsession levels increase, the rest of their life falls apart around them. It's consistent in stalking cases for the stalker to lose their job as a result of their obsession, and they will also stop eating and sleeping. What makes domestic stalkers so dangerous is that they truly believe that they are the victim. Here's the thing. A domestic stalker never thinks they are a stalker. Consequently, you can never stop a stalker by calling them out on it and saying, "You're a stalker, so please stop stalking me." It's only likely to make the problem worse because they will feel more victimized. Whether they actually are the victim or not depends on the circumstances of each individual case. But the stalker will believe that they are the victim of being closed out of their life, perhaps their home. A very common stereotypical scenario is when a mother gains sole custody of the children, completely shutting out the father from their lives. Rightly or wrongly so, mothers win 90% of custody battles. I'm not trying to justify stalking behaviour at all, but it's easy to appreciate how, in those instances, the man will always feel as though he is the victim of a heinous crime, regardless of the events that may have led up to that custody order. The more that the man or woman has been hurt, then the more likely they are to feel victimised, and thus the more likely they are to lash out. Because the stalker is usually in the mindset of, if I'm suffering, then so should you, which can lead to tragic consequences. Anonymous stalkers, on the other hand, are not inspired by a personal connection to the victim, because they don't have one, of course. Stranger stalkers are often the most mentally deranged, i.e. they are more likely to have sociopathic tendencies than domestic stalkers. Yet, they are surprisingly the least dangerous form of stalker. A typical stranger stalker fits perfectly into the sociopath profile. They are usually highly narcissistic and can easily become obsessed with a particular thing or person. A stranger stalker will begin stalking to gain control, because a typical stalker will have, or at least feel, that they have little control over their own life, either as a result of current circumstance or their upbringing. The behaviour of a stalker can seem counterintuitive at first glance. They appear to be obsessed with a particular man or woman, usually sexually, yet they simultaneously go out of their way to intimidate that person or even resort to violence. But there is reasoning behind the aggression. Aggressive behaviour is the easiest way to assert control over a victim, especially one that is physically weaker than oneself. Through intimidation, whether that be leaving creepy messages on the victim's answering machine or following them around, the stalker is creating fear and thus asserting control. It stands to reason that the more victims a stalker has under their tyrannical thumb, the more control they feel and enjoy. And this is reflected in the fact that most stranger stalkers do in fact maintain more than one victim at the same time. Interestingly, it's also this desire for control that means that most threats from an anonymous stalker are empty. If, for example, a stalker threatens to kill their victim, most of the time it is just an extreme way to cause fear and thus gain a greater sense of control over that person. If they were to actually carry through with the murder, they would of course no longer have someone to control, and so that avenue of pleasure would be permanently closed off to them. Obviously, this is not always the case, and there have been many tragic incidents where such threats do turn out to be more than just words. It should also be mentioned that statistically, when a domestic stalker threatens violence against their victim, they are significantly more likely to carry through with it than when a stranger stalker does. Because domestic stalkers are driven more by emotions and a desire for revenge than a need for control, so they are usually more willing to act out violence. According to statistics published in a 2009 paper, domestic stalkers will carry through with a threat of violence 1 out of every 2 times.
That's staggering.
Whereas a stranger stalker
1 out of every 2 times. 1 out of every 2 times.
who has no prior relationship with the victim will only carry through with a threat 1 out of every 10 times. These days, of course, there is a new breed of stalking that makes finding out what your victim had for breakfast disturbingly simple: social media. In a world where publicly flaunting which gym you attend each morning and Instagramming scenic pictures of the park you jog through during your daily commute, it's effortless for stalkers to ply their trade. Anyone can be the victim of online stalking and abuse, both men and women. In fact, a recent report by British think tank Demos suggests that men receive much more, with 2.5% of the tweets sent to men being...
Women are more passive with their crime. Poison is a woman's weapon. Stealth. So cyber stalking is definitely more of a woman thing than a man thing. Q, I don't get your reference to Elixir. Same here, especially Elixir. Let's see. I have 2 stalkers that follow me every time I go to the fridge. Oh, now I get it. Dude, Elixir. Yeah, he does. Him in the fridge. He'll be like, I know what you keep in there.
Being classified as abusive compared to 1% of tweets.
I gotta see Elixir. I miss him.
Some social media platforms offer tools for you to block certain people from viewing your profile, but these are often woefully inadequate and wouldn't prevent any stalker with a moderate level of IT competency from finding another way to view your latest posts. Honestly, the best thing you can do to protect yourself from unwelcome prying eyes, short of deleting your social media, is making sure your accounts are secure, especially your email account, which is...
Okay, so the next video, let's watch this one.
Stalking is a disturbing behavior, but the truth is, it's more common than we realize. Each stalker has their own motivations and methods, and knowing these types can help us understand what to watch for and how to protect ourselves. Let's talk about the 7 types of stalkers you might encounter and how to recognize them. Number 1, the rejected stalker.
Cute. We never allowed him in the kitchen. He is probably loving it. that you're standing there cooking and he's letting you stand under him. Because I would be like, get out of here. You better get gone.
This type of stalker often emerges after a breakup or the end of a significant relationship. They can't accept that it's over, and their feelings of rejection drive them to stalk as a way to either regain control or get revenge. Rejected stalkers might bombard you with texts, calls, or even show up at familiar places to run into you. They often can't take no for an answer and may use manipulation to stay connected. If someone from your past is persistently around despite a clear breakup, tries to bring up old memories, or won't let go, they may be a rejected stalker. Number 2, the resentful stalker. The resentful stalker feels wronged and holds a grudge, often over something minor or imagined. They view stalking as payback and aim to cause fear or discomfort. They may send hostile messages, spread rumors, or show up in your social circles to create tension. Unlike the rejected stalker, they have no interest in repairing the relationship. They want revenge. If someone seems unusually aggressive or intent on damaging your reputation, they may be a resentful stalker. Number 3, the intimacy seeker. The intimacy seeker believes you're meant to be together, even if you barely know them. They often build a fantasy around the idea that you're their soulmate, without a basis for it in real life. They might send you love letters, gifts, or frequently message you, convinced you're meant to be. They interpret even basic friendliness as a sign of love. If someone insists there's a connection, despite limited interaction, and tries to create a romantic story without your consent, they could be an intimacy seeker. Number 4, the incompetent stalker. The incompetent stalker wants a relationship but lacks the social skills to build one in a healthy way. They don't necessarily mean harm but can't respect boundaries. They may repeatedly ask you out, send awkward messages, or try to bump into you, despite clear rejections. They are persistent but often misinterpret politeness as interest. If someone repeatedly ignores your disinterest and won't respect boundaries, they may be an incompetent stalker. Number 5, the predatory stalker. The predatory stalker is the most dangerous type, stalking with the intent of causing harm or fulfilling a dark desire. They're often secretive and monitor their target without direct contact. They may watch from afar, track your routines, or use hidden surveillance methods. Unlike others, they rarely reach out or make themselves known. If someone seems to be observing you but avoids direct interaction, they could be a predatory stalker. This type requires immediate caution. Number 6, the cyber stalker. The cyber stalker uses technology to monitor, harass, or control you online. They track your social media, message you obsessively, and may even hack into your accounts. They might send unwanted messages, leave constant comments, or follow your online activity closely. Cyber stalkers often hide behind anonymous accounts or fake profiles. If someone repeatedly interacts with your online posts or reaches out from multiple unknown profiles, they might be a cyber stalker. Number 7, the workplace stalker. The workplace stalker is someone who develops an obsessive interest in a colleague or acquaintance they interact with at work. This can start as simple admiration, but may progress into unwanted attention, causing discomfort in professional settings. They might go out of their way to be near you, find excuses to talk, or even monitor your schedule. Some may interpret friendliness as a signal of deeper feelings, which can lead to more intrusive behavior. If a colleague constantly shows up in places you didn't expect them, frequently offers help you didn't ask for, or brings up personal matters out of place, they could be a workplace stalker. Understanding these types of stalkers can help us recognize early warning signs. If someone's behavior feels intrusive or controlling, don't ignore it. Setting boundaries and seeking support can help protect you from unwanted attention. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, you don't have to deal with it alone.
All right. So let's just make sure to specify here. One uncomfortable encounter, is not necessarily stalking. Make sure my apps are shut down. Hang on one second. Just got a notification on my phone. Okay. Hopefully my phone does not die. One argument is not stalking. A single unwanted message also is not stalking. But I think it's important to define it in terms of the psychological standard and what legal systems consider stalking. So both psychologists and legal systems will generally describe stalking as a pattern of repeated unwanted behavior directed at a very specific person that causes fear, distress, or substantial disruption to that person's life. And what matters here is the pattern, not any one act in isolation. So some common behaviors would be repeated unwanted communication, like they said, persistent monitoring of your social media, showing up unexpectedly, following someone, creating a bunch of fake accounts after being blocked, contacting friends, families, or coworkers to gather information, sending gifts after being told to stop, flat out impersonation or identity misuse, which has happened to me, and excessive surveillance of a person's activities. So all of these things must be repeated unwanted contact that persists after the boundaries are made clear, and then the concern will arise for stalking. So the federal government will define stalking as a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear for their safety or the safety of others, or suffer some kind of substantial emotional distress. So under the U.S. law, the specific one is 18 U.S.C. 2261A. If you want to look that up, it explains that stalking involves a pattern of repeated and unwanted attention, harassment, or contact intended to kill, injure, harass, or intimidate someone. And the core legal elements to stalking would be to be prosecuted as stalking at the federal level. The behavior has to generally meet the following criteria. A course of conduct criteria. So a pattern of actions composed of two or more acts. Then you have the intent. So the actions are done with the intent to kill, injure, harass, or place someone in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury to themselves, immediate family, or their intimate partner. And then you have the interstate commerce. The perpetrator uses the mail or interactive computer service or device or travels across state lines or international borders to commit the act. And the behaviors that the federal government says constitute stalking, which they do specify can occur both in person and digitally. And the stalker is often someone the victim knows, such as like a former partner or a colleague or an acquaintance. Oh my God. Common behaviors are, again, the repeated following, spying or lying in wait for the victim, making any non-consensual or unwanted phone calls, sending texts or sending emails, sending unsolicited or unwanted gifts even and letters, harassing or monitoring the victim via the internet or any other tracking devices that would be considered cyber stalking. Damaging or threatening to damage the victim's personal property is also on there. So for more specific information regarding your rights and resources, you can visit the Office on Violence Against Women or the National Institute of Justice, and you can report that. But let's get into some videos here now. Give my lungs a break from talking.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Angel Storm. I'm the founder of AshesToBeautyMinistries.org, and today I'm here to talk to you about narcissism and cyberstalking. Unfortunately, narcissists are known to be cyberstalkers, and there isn't a lot of laws that help you when it comes to preventing and ceasing and desisting this type of harassment. But today I do want to give you kind of an overview of what to expect if a narcissist is cyberstalking you, and then some things that you can do to kind of move on with your life. So first of all, narcissists will set up fake profiles on Facebook and other social media platforms. They can even use your children's name to do so. They usually have more than one fake account, and this is so that they can spy on you if you've tried to block them. They have another way to look at what you're doing, and from there they can even take that information and send it to you in an email or a text message, you know, kind of to intimidate you or to let you know that they know what's going on, or just to kind of get a rise out of you. Narcissists are...
What's up, Moi Poi? Good to see you in the chat. Welcome, welcome.
Looking for you to react to them in
Jack.
any way, even
No t-shirt tonight.
if it's a negative way. They get their energy by manipulating other people. So even if it's an intimidation factor, even if they feel like they have done that to you, then they've won and they've gotten energy from you. While I was researching this video topic, I did come across one article that talked about how somebody was able to successfully have their stalker arrested strictly off of what they were doing online. So they had taken lots of screenshots, they had everything documented in terms of what the person was actually doing to them, and they were able to get a cease and desist order. They had a no contact order put in place, and the person still violated that, and so then they were able to have that person arrested. But this is very rare. As I was researching it, even the government itself will say that it's very difficult to arrest a cyber stalker. And if you take into consideration the fact that it's a narcissist as well, who are very manipulative and able to outsmart a lot of people, it's going to be very difficult. The thing that I would like to convey to you is to move on with your life. When the person is constantly doing this, yes, take the appropriate steps as you can to document what is happening. Don't allow it to just kind of go on and just delete the message and move on. Take a screenshot or capture it however you can, however you need to, and make sure that it's safe somewhere where, you know, the person can't hack into your computer and delete it or something like that. But what I suggest doing is to just ignore them and move on. This might seem like you're letting them get away with it, but really you're allowing your own self to move on with your life. You're allowing your own self to build and to move forward and to not allow the narcissist to have any hold on you. If this is happening, if the harassment is happening in a chat room or a group, allow the moderator to know what is going on, you know, and if they're not willing to do anything about it, just leave it. You need to be focused on you. You need to be worried about you. You need to be doing your life how you want to do it, and not allowing what the narcissist could be doing, might be doing, could possibly at some point use to intimidate or harass you to stop you from living your life. This is the only thing that you are going to have control over. Even if you do take all of the screenshots that you possibly can, even if you have all of this evidence, it's still going to be at the bottom of the list for most police departments to look into. You're still going to have to fight to get on the docket at the courthouse if you choose to press charges. It's still going to be a battle for you, so really weigh the things that you are looking at, either putting your effort into moving forward, and if you feel like you need to do these other steps, that you need to seek legal ways to have this end and to have the narcissist pay, then absolutely do that. Whatever is going to give you peace at night, you know, but recognize the fact that you can put all of your eggs into one basket, into pressing charges and seeking legal ramifications towards the narcissist. It can still fall short. The only thing that you can actually absolutely control is what you do with your life and where your future is headed. You guys, I hope this video has helped you. Again, my name is Dr. Angel Storm. I'm the founder of ashes2beautyministries.org. Be sure to check out my website.
Hear all that shit. Let me get on to the next video.
Cyberstalking. You may be a victim or know someone who is. Cyberstalking is when someone uses an electronic communication device to harass and intimidate others. Victims may fear that they, their family members, or even their pets may be harmed or killed by the stalker. Both men and women are victims, and perpetrators. Cyberstalking behaviors include trolling, sending threatening messages, and hacking emails. They communicate with victims' friends, families, and employers to spread accusations and lies. They post or threaten to post revenge porn. They track victims through their social media activity, geolocation spyware on their phones, or by attaching GPS devices to their vehicles. In a technique called catfishing, they lure their victims into providing intimate photos or videos, which they use to blackmail them. Or they develop a relationship to get victims to trust them, and then ask for money in a sudden emergency. Whatever the reason behind such malicious behavior, two things are clear. 1. Cyberstalking is a crime. There are state and federal laws against cyberstalking in the US and in the UK. If convicted, cyberstalkers can be fined or imprisoned. 2. You can help prevent it. And there's no better time than now. The first step to protect yourself is research. Type your name in a search engine to learn how much identifying information about you is public. The information may include your phone number and address. Make sure to check your friends and family's social media. Cyberstalkers can find out your whereabouts or where you'll be through posts and photos. Once you find out how much of your personal information is available online, the next step is to limit access to it and make it as hard as possible for anyone to obtain it. Start by removing personal information, such as your social security number, home address, or phone number from the web. There are third-party websites that specialize in removing this information. Google will help you remove your social security number from being displayed. If you have a profile on an online dating site, don't include your full name. Don't give your phone number or email address to anyone you haven't met in person and would like to meet again. Increase the privacy settings on all your social media profiles. Never allow social media to post your phone number or address. Skip filling out information such as date or birth and other optional fields. Make your posts for friends only, and accept friend requests only from friends of friends. Never accept friend requests from people you don't know or haven't met in person. Never share private information in a post. Send a direct message instead. Disable geolocation when possible. And always log off social media when you're done. This helps prevent your account from being hacked. Now that you've taken care of your presence online, it's time to secure your computer. Never use public Wi-Fi without a virtual private network, or VPN. This prevents anyone from eavesdropping on your communications. Install anti-spyware on your computer, which will detect if it has been infected. Make sure your computer is protected by a strong password that's not easy to guess, and change it regularly. Your phone should also be secure. You can start by blocking the cyberstalker's number with the block caller option. Then enable your phone's GPS only for apps that critically need it, such as maps, navigation, and delivery services. Avoid installing apps that request access to your contact list. If you receive a phone call or email asking for personal information, hang up. Legitimate companies will not ask for this information. If you are already a victim of cyberstalking, do everything this video has shown to limit access to your personal information online, your computer, and phone. Warn the cyberstalker in writing that you don't wish to be contacted, and that you'll go to the police if they don't comply. After that, do not engage in any kind of communication with them. If your warning doesn't stop the stalking, report it to your local law enforcement. Hire a computer professional to check your computer, phone, and other electronic devices to delete any spyware that may have been installed. Report all instances of cyberstalking on social media to the network. Their help and support pages should contain information on what you should do.
It does.
If you think the cyberstalker might harass you at work, inform your employer immediately. For threatening or abusive emails, block the sender and report the stalker to their internet service provider. Finally, save all emails, texts, posts, screenshots, and photos involved in the stalking, along with police reports. Back them up on a flash or external drive. Cyberstalking is a serious crime. Taking back control of your information and privacy is just as serious. Kaspersky offers the security you need to keep your computer and online activities safe.
The first key to combating cyberstalkers like these is for the victims to let as many people as they're comfortable telling know what's happening and who's doing the stalking. That is, if they know who the person is who's doing the stalking.
The more people that know that this is going on, the more witnesses you'll have, and the more likely it is.
In 2019, nearly 1 million U.S. residents aged 16 and older were victims of cyberstalking. And these are only the known cases. How many victims stayed silent? With the rise of the internet, stalking someone has become easier than ever. Today, let's look at cyberstalking and how we can deal with someone threatening our online privacy. The colossal numbers speak for themselves. Digital abuse, cyberstalking is everywhere, and not just in the dark corners of the net. Just this year, after a very public divorce, Kim Kardashian was subjected to a barrage of cyberstalking when her unhinged ex, Kanye West,
Ha! How did Kanye get drug into this now? We're over here talking about cyberstalking. We got Kanye popping up. The universe I'm in. Hilarious. Poor Kanye. Poor Kanye can't catch a break.
allegedly used his fame and resources to track and cyberstalk his former wife. So the more time people spend online, the more they expose themselves to danger. And when it comes to cyberstalking on social media and the internet, the more we share, the bigger the target we become. Cyberstalking is a broad term and can include small things like liking all your old photos on Facebook or personal email stalking, or it can be quite extreme, like someone installing stalkerware on your phone to follow you. It's something that our society has recognized as a serious threat and that's inspired conversations and cyberstalking prevention advice from experts. Let's dive into the world of scary stalker stories to learn a bit more about how they can unfold. In many Reddit horror stories about cybercrime, the perpetrator starts as a friend or romantic partner, someone that already has some kind of access to you. According to Reddit user Polar Barrel, that's exactly how the Dungeons & Dragons stalking case began. While a group of friends were playing D&D on Discord, one among them was constantly trying to push the game his own way.
D&D,
He was
he's a cool
very
kid.
much attempting to push himself to become much more of a permanent member in the game, even though we had made it clear multiple times that we did not have enough room for an extra person on the regular.
And this friction between D&D players soon escalated to a much bigger problem.
This ongoing behavior of his started to become much more prevalent and it started to bleed into other aspects of how we would interact with each other socially, not just with D&D, to the point that he was basically sexually harassing one of my friends.
Initially, the group of D&D players tried to let the stalker know that this sort of behavior would not be tolerated. They set clear boundaries, saying that they would contact him only if and when they decided to. Keatron Evans, an expert we consulted about this, said,
Yeah, it is cyber stalking, and it's pretty typical. When you see people online in this regard, they are very different people than when they're in person, right? Like suddenly people have all this courage. People will say things online that they would never say in person. They have a whole different attitude. And with the people that have the technical savvy, they can be some pretty intimidating stalkers and pretty intimidating cyber stalkers. A lot of them would never, intimidate someone or even have any type of friction with someone if it were in person, but suddenly behind the keyboard where you're out of reach of everyone, those people that have that technical savvy become the bullies.
Evans believed that the D&D players did the right thing by asking the toxic individual not to interact with him. But sadly, that wasn't the end of his harassment.
Within a day, he began to send us long, massive messages. It ranged from everything from him apologizing to him blaming us for what he did, and in other cases that our friend should be grateful for what he did to her.
As a last-ditch effort in this game of stalker and victims, the group decided to block the perpetrator on all social media accounts. However, any peace and quiet they may have enjoyed only lasted a moment. Soon, Polar Barrel and friends learned that this toxic person had created new accounts and was still cyber stalking. At one point, the stalker even tried to contact the group from other people's accounts and kept sending disturbing emails.
It was a lot of anxiety. It was a lot of stress and powerlessness, knowing that he was still there, seeing what we were putting out on the internet.
For some in the group, it seemed the only logical thing to do was to make their social media accounts private, essentially removing their presence on the internet because of one stalker. Polar Barrel said it was a tough situation because the group had started out as part of the stalker's main circle of close friends, who he talked to almost daily. But friendships, or even love, can easily turn into obsession.
Even to this day, we're not really sure if he's still stalking us.
The first key to combating cyberstalkers like these is for the victims to let as many people as they're comfortable telling know what's happening and who's doing the stalking. That is, if they know who the person is who's doing the stalking.
The more people that know that this is going on, the more witnesses you'll have, and the more likely it is for you to have some level of protection there. And you may even let this person know that, like, hey, I've let my family and friends know that this is going on. I've let law enforcement know. If you continue to contact me, you're going to be potentially breaking the law, and it could lead to some bad things.
In many cases, just like the D&D stalker, when things escalate, contacting law enforcement is crucial. Though cyber stalking is an internet crime, a record of a victim asking a perpetrator not to contact them could help get a restraining order.
There's been more and more cases of where cyber stalking did turn into real stalking, in-person stalking, and in some cases, in-person assaults and things like that, confrontations.
Hey, quick note, if you like these informative videos, subscribe to our channel.
What do I have to listen to you talk about? Okay, let's get to stalkerware.
Cyberstalking real story examples often happen closer to home. For example, former spouses trying to keep track of their exes are common cybercrime cases. During the pandemic, experts observed an uptick in stalkerware, which was in many cases reported by domestic violence victims. Stalkerwares are apps that can be stealthily installed on any phone or device. They send all data, your GPS location, the programs you used, and the text you typed to a specific email address. The problem is, it's pretty hard to stop stalkerware, since sometimes victims of cybercrime are unaware of any unusual activity on their devices. By nature, stalkerware goes unnoticed because they're designed to masquerade as regular system apps and hide their presence as much as possible. If you don't know where to look, it can be extremely difficult to find these stalkerware apps. So, there are coalition against stalkerware groups who try to spread awareness and information. But unfortunately, it isn't always close friends or ex-spouses you can see coming. Recently, Keatron observed a spike in what he calls stalking by strangers, or stalkers who abuse popular security cameras and video doorbells.
Most of these vendors, they have a community that you can be a member of, and you can kind of see what people are posting and what's going on around their houses and things like that.
And with more people working from home than ever in our history, cyber stalking is rising at an all-time high.
When you were going into the office and sitting at your office working on the internet, you were going through all the security protections that your corporation had. Now you're just going through whatever you got at home, your little wireless router and whatever security you got at home. You're a lot more exposed.
Of course, each cyber stalking case is different in both scale and severity. One of the most chilling examples is an aggressive campaign carried out by former eBay employees. It involved not only harassing victims by sending unsettling messages and GPS traffic, but also delivering a variety of threatening items to the victim's home, including a bloody pig Halloween mask,
Oh my God,
and a book on surviving the death of a spouse. Other stalkers create threatening content around targeted individuals. For example, they'll show up at the victim's home and record them through their bedroom window while they're sleeping.
That shit's
or record themselves
freaky.
watching the person asleep. Then later, they'll send the victim the video to let them know, hey, I was watching you sleep last night.
No.
Cyberstalking law is similar to any real-life law. For a judge to issue a subpoena or warrant, the victims of stalkerware or other attacks must be able to make a compelling argument backed with enough evidence. Unfortunately, a judge might not even be able to act on a message like, I hate you, alone. Cyberstalking and cybersecurity is a big deal, so staying informed is now more...
All right. Let me see. Is that the one? Is that the same one? Let me make sure.
Cyberstalking.
Here we go.
Are you a victim of cyberstalking in Washington State? Are you charged with cyberstalking in Washington State? Or are you just interested in what cyberstalking means for Washington State? Well, if so, you've come to the right place. My name is Lance Freiberg, and I have a defense firm in Linwood, Washington, and we've been defending people charged with crimes for more than 20 years. And we are putting out videos to help educate the public about different aspects of the criminal law. And this video is about cyberstalking. In this video, I'm going to cover three things. Number one, what is cyberstalking? Whether you're a victim or a defendant, what is it? Because it's a complicated statute. It's a complicated law. Number two, what are some common situations that we see cyberstalking come up? And number three, if you are in this type of problem, either as a victim or as a defendant, what are some things you can do about it? So if you find this video helpful, please like the video, please subscribe. It'll help me get this out to more people. And now I'm just going to jump right into it. And first, I'm going to talk about what is cyber stalking. And I've made about 60 videos so far, and I've never had to put on my glasses and read it. But this one, even I can't memorize. So bear with me. I'm going to grab my computer here and read you what it says. Cyber stalking is defined in RCW, that's the Revised Code of Washington, 9.61.260. It says a person is guilty of cyber stalking if he or she, with the intent to harass, so that's important, intimidate, torment, or embarrass any other person, you make an electronic communication to the other person or to a third party using any lewd, indecent, or obscene words, images, or language, or suggesting the commission of any lewd act, or if the electronic communication is anonymously or repeatedly annoying, basically, or threatens to inflict the injury on another person or property, or any member of that other person's family or household. So the exception is that if it would constitute telephone harassment, in other words, if it's a telephone call and you're calling someone a bunch of names, that's not cyber stalking, that's telephone harassment. If you are sending a message through Instagram or Twitter or text messaging or Snapchat that is threatening somebody, that is lewd, is repeated and anonymous at odd hours, that could be cyber stalking. So it's very broad, and it can't be a single message, which is pretty crazy, because just hear how broad that was. We're going to put the statute, we're going to link to the statute at the end of this so you can read those terms yourself. But you send one mean message to someone on Instagram, and that could be cyber stalking. Or you receive a mean message, that could be cyber stalking. Now, I've not really seen it enforced that way by the police yet, but take a look at this. It's very broad. And so what is the penalty for someone charged with cyber stalking? Well, in most cases, it's a gross misdemeanor offense, which means the maximum penalty is $5,000 and 1 year in jail. For certain cases, it's a felony. It's a felony if the threat that's communicated by electronic means is to kill. And it could be a felony if the suspect has a prior conviction of harassment versus the victim here, or by apparently someone named in a no-contact order is what I read in the statute. So for the most cases, it's a non-felony, but still a gross misdemeanor is very serious. So number two, what are some situations where we've seen cyberstalking charged? Well, some situations would be, asking somebody, an underage person, to send them.
Make sure you guys hit that like button. Please comment, subscribe, reshare.
Some photos that might be revealing. That's the lewd part, right? That could be other crimes also, like communicating with a minor for immoral purposes by electronic means. It's a felony, but that would also be cyberstalking. We've seen cyberstalking alleged with repeated fake reviews about somebody's business. That one's harder to prove. We've seen that. We've seen cyberstalking with repeated text messages threatening someone. Again, because cyberstalking generally needs to be by some type of electronic means. It needs to not be telephone.
Good to see you're still with us,
I
Caddy.
think I can see some ways that the telephone's involved, text messaging, Snapchatting, other things. But the most common situations that we've seen charged, it's been pretty clear that it's been repeated and harassing. I don't think the law enforcement in general is that interested in pursuing a one-off that isn't very clear. So three, and thanks for saying it again, if you're dealing with this as either a victim of cyberstalking or as defendant, how do you deal with it? Well, as a victim of cyberstalking, you're going to want to obviously collect the information. You're going to want to try to have as much proof as you can that you know who's doing this, and then you're going to want to report it to the police. Okay, but do your due diligence and make it as easy as possible for law enforcement to understand what's going on, because law enforcement's busy, and you don't want to run into a situation where you can't really show who did it. And so, just work on that aspect of it is usually a good idea. If you're charged with this type of offense, that is a common defense. It's like, how do you know, since it's electronic, how do you know it was me that sent it, right? And so if you're being investigated for this, it's best not to talk to police. And if you are charged with it, one of the defenses could be, well, how do we know it was you? Because it's so easy to spoof things, sort of fake things nowadays, right? Another defense, well, it might not be a legal defense. It could be a good thing to raise to the prosecution. You might have been having some problems at the time. Maybe we need to get you into some counseling, some mental health counseling, or if there's alcohol and drugs involved, maybe alcohol and drug counseling. There's things that we can do to lessen the impact. So I hope you find this video helpful. Cyberstalking is somewhat newer to Washington State and is very broad. And even though we've been defending crimes for more than 20 years, we haven't seen that many cases. But it's a big problem, and it's probably a useful law. So if you find yourself facing this charge, feel free to give our office a call. Again, my name is Lance Freiber. We've been defending this type of charge and crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 20 years. We'll do everything we can for you, and we'll be there for you. Thank you.
Okay, so here's the first myth. We're going to talk about the psychology of a stalker here now. So here's the first myth. Most stalkers are not criminal masterminds. Okay, many of them are emotionally dysregulated individuals whose thinking has become increasingly distorted. And researchers have identified several common psychological themes. The first one being obsession. The person's thoughts become increasingly centered on another individual, and they may replay conversations repeatedly, analyze all their social media posts, or assign exaggerated meanings to ordinary events. Basically, their attention narrows so much so until the other person occupies an unhealthy amount of mental space.
Obsession is a psychological state where a thought, idea, or desire persistently dominates a person's mind, often to the point of interfering with daily life. Unlike regular interests or passions, obsessions are intrusive and difficult to control, making them feel overwhelming. People experiencing obsession may find themselves repeatedly thinking about a specific person, object, or activity, even when they try to focus elsewhere. This mental loop can cause distress and anxiety as the mind struggles to break free from the repetitive cycle. Understanding obsession is the first step to recognizing its impact on our thoughts and behaviors, setting the stage for deeper exploration into its causes and effects. To truly understand obsession, we need to look at its origins. Obsessions often stem from a mix of biological, psychological, and environmental factors. For some, genetics may play a role, making them more susceptible to obsessive thinking. Others might develop obsessions as a coping mechanism for stress, trauma, or anxiety. Environmental influences, such as upbringing or cultural expectations, can also shape how obsessions form and persist. By examining these roots, we can see that obsession is rarely caused by a single factor. Instead, it's the result of a complex interplay between our minds, bodies, and surroundings, which makes each person's experience unique. Obsessive thoughts are persistent, unwanted ideas or images that repeatedly enter a person's mind. These thoughts can be distressing, often focusing on fears, doubts, or desires that seem impossible to ignore. For example, someone might constantly worry about their health, relationships, or performance at work, even when there's no real reason for concern. The more a person tries to suppress these thoughts, the stronger they can become, creating a frustrating cycle. Understanding the nature of obsessive thoughts helps us see why they're so hard to shake and why they can have such a powerful hold over our daily lives.
Welcome to the chat, Truth Tellin' Tim. He says over on YouTube, he says, I'm somewhat obsessed with my 2.5-year-old son. I just love that kid. That's a good obsession.
Obsession doesn't just affect our thoughts, it also takes a toll on our emotions. People caught in obsessive cycles often experience intense feelings of anxiety, guilt, or shame. These emotions can be overwhelming, making it even harder to break free from obsessive thinking. The emotional distress caused by obsession can spill over into other areas of life, affecting relationships, work, and overall well-being. Recognizing the emotional impact of obsession is crucial, as it highlights the need for compassion and understanding, both for ourselves and for others who may be struggling. It's important to distinguish between obsession and passion. While both involve intense focus, passion is generally positive and energizing, driving us to achieve goals and find fulfillment. Obsession, on the other hand, tends to be negative and draining, often leading to distress and dysfunction. Passion is flexible and allows for balance, whereas obsession is rigid and all-consuming. Understanding this difference can help us recognize when our interests are becoming unhealthy and when it might be time to seek help or make changes. Certain situations or experiences can trigger obsessive thinking. Stressful life events, such as a breakup, job loss, or health scare, often act as catalysts. Even everyday stressors, like deadlines or social pressures, can set off obsessive cycles in vulnerable individuals. Sometimes, triggers are subtle, like a passing comment or a fleeting worry that spiral into persistent thoughts. By identifying common triggers, we can become more aware of what sets off our obsessions and take steps to manage them before they take over. Obsessions often lead to specific behaviors aimed at reducing anxiety or gaining control. These can include repetitive actions, such as checking, counting, or seeking reassurance. For example, someone obsessed with cleanliness might wash their hands excessively, while another person might repeatedly check if the door is locked. These behaviors provide temporary relief, but usually reinforce the obsessive cycle in the long run. Recognizing these patterns is an important step toward breaking free from obsession's grip. Obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, is a mental health condition where obsessions and compulsions become severe enough to interfere with daily life. People with OCD experience intrusive thoughts and feel compelled to perform rituals or routines to ease their anxiety. These compulsions can be time-consuming and distressing, making it difficult to function normally. While not all obsessions lead to OCD, understanding this disorder helps us see how obsession can escalate and why professional support is sometimes necessary. Neuroscience has shown that obsession is linked to specific brain circuits, particularly those involved in decision-making, reward, and emotional regulation. When these circuits become overactive or imbalanced, obsessive thoughts and behaviors can emerge. Brain imaging studies reveal that people with obsessive tendencies often have heightened activity in areas like the orbitofrontal cortex and basal ganglia. This biological perspective...
I like that. Jack just said, passion is reciprocal. Obsession is one-sided. There you go.
Obsession can feel so powerful and difficult to control, even when we know it's irrational. Cognitive distortions are biased ways of thinking that fuel obsession. These include catastrophizing, black and white thinking, and overgeneralization. For example,
catastrophizing is borderline
failure, or that a minor worry signals a major problem. These distorted thoughts make obsessions feel more urgent and real, trapping us in a cycle of anxiety and rumination. Learning to recognize and challenge cognitive distortions is a key part of overcoming obsessive thinking. In today's digital world, social media can amplify obsessive tendencies. The constant stream of updates, likes, and notifications can make it hard to stop thinking about how we're perceived online. For some, this leads to compulsive checking, comparing, or seeking validation. Social media platforms are designed to capture our attention, making it easy for obsessions to take root and grow. Being mindful of our online habits can help us maintain a healthier relationship with technology and our own thoughts. Obsession can have a profound impact on relationships. When someone becomes fixated on another person, it can lead to jealousy, possessiveness, or constant need for reassurance. These behaviors often strain relationships, creating tension and mistrust. It's important to recognize when caring for someone crosses the line into obsession, as this can harm both parties. Healthy relationships are built on trust and balance, not control or fixation. Obsession is a common theme in movies, books, and music. Stories about characters consumed by love, revenge, or ambition capture our imagination and reflect real psychological struggles. While these portrayals can be dramatic or exaggerated, they highlight the intensity and complexity of obsession. By examining how obsession is depicted in popular culture, we gain insight into its power and the ways it shapes human behavior. While obsession is often seen as negative, it can sometimes drive creativity, innovation, or achievement. Many artists, scientists, and entrepreneurs have channeled obsessive energy into their work, leading to breakthroughs and success. The key is to harness this intensity in a healthy way, maintaining balance and self-care. When managed well, obsessive focus can be a powerful force for personal growth and accomplishment. Obsession crosses the line into harm when it disrupts daily life, damages relationships, or leads to risky behaviors. Warning signs include neglecting responsibilities, isolating from others, or feeling unable to control thoughts and actions. Recognizing these red flags is crucial for seeking help and preventing further harm. It's important to remember that obsession is treatable, and support is available for those who need it. Managing obsession involves a range of coping strategies. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques can help calm the mind and reduce anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is especially effective, teaching people to challenge obsessive thoughts and develop healthier patterns. Setting boundaries, practicing self-care, and seeking social support are also important steps. With patience and persistence, it's possible to regain control and find relief from obsessive cycles. Sometimes obsession becomes too overwhelming to manage alone. In these cases, seeking professional help is a wise choice. Therapists and counselors can provide guidance, support, and evidence-based treatments like CBT or medication. Early intervention can prevent obsessions from escalating and improve quality of life. Remember, reaching out for help is a sign of strength, not weakness, and can be the first step toward lasting change. If someone you care about is struggling with obsession, your support can make a big difference. Listen without judgment, offer encouragement, and help them find professional resources if needed. Avoid minimizing their experience or offering quick fixes. Compassion and patience are key. By being present and understanding, you can help your loved one feel less alone and more empowered to seek help. Breaking free from obsession is a gradual process that requires self-awareness and commitment. Start by identifying triggers and patterns, then practice healthier responses. Small steps, like taking breaks, redirecting attention, or challenging negative thoughts, can make a big difference over time. Celebrate progress, no matter how small. And remember that setbacks are part of the journey. With persistence, it's possible to break the cycle and reclaim your mental space. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from challenges, including obsessive thoughts. Building resilience involves developing coping skills, maintaining supportive relationships.
Backwater says, good night, all. I can't fight the power of the meds anymore. Much love to you all. Be safe, be great, and have a good one. Luna, thank you for what you do. Absolutely, Backwater. Good to see you. Glad to have you with us. Hope you feel better.
And nurturing a positive mindset. Activities like exercise, creative hobbies, and mindfulness can strengthen resilience and reduce the impact of obsession. Over time, these habits help us.
Let's see. Tim says, I was getting obsessed with politics on Facebook earlier this year, so much so that I was getting extremely angry when I'd see a post by one side. Identity politics is causing unhealthy obsessions. I 100% agree. That's why some nights on my podcast, I just stay away from politics because we just got to have a break. 2 nights a week, I just leave it alone.
Face difficulties with greater confidence and flexibility, making it easier to manage obsessive tendencies. Understanding the psychology of obsession empowers us to take control of our thoughts and behaviors. By recognizing the signs, seeking...
Please hit that like, hit that subscribe, please follow, please repost, hit that thumb.
Support and practicing healthy coping strategies, we can move beyond obsession and lead more balanced, fulfilling lives.
Chat Q says politics is gay theater.
How we respond, that makes the difference.
Fake and
With knowledge and
gay.
compassion, we can break free from the grip of obsession and embrace a healthier mindset.
All right. So now that brings us to entitlement. This is a funny one. Some stalkers begin believing that they just deserve access to another person's attention, their affection, or their time. And boundaries that you set become interpreted as like unfair obstacles rather than legitimate choices.
Let's explore a few of them. 1. Upbringing and parenting.
We're talking about entitlement.
The way a person is raised can play a significant role in shaping their beliefs and attitudes. If someone grows up in an environment where they are constantly praised and rewarded without having to put in much effort, they may develop a sense of entitlement. When parents overindulge their children or shield them from experiencing failure or disappointment, it can contribute to a mindset that they deserve special treatment throughout their lives. 2. Socioeconomic status. A person's socioeconomic status can also influence their sense of entitlement. Those who come from privileged backgrounds where they have access to wealth, resources, and opportunities may develop a belief that they deserve these advantages simply because of their social position. This can lead to a sense of entitlement and a lack of empathy towards those who are less fortunate. 3. Cultural and social influences. Cultural and social factors can shape one's sense of worth. Let's explore a...
Y'all want to see what got me cracking up? This. Orgies are gross. Too many dicks involved. From a girl's perspective, there can never be too many. Well, yeah, there could be. I think with too many, you'd feel like you just got in a car crash. Why are guys okay with getting the extra? They're okay with more, they're okay with multiple girls, but if the girl says, hey, I want another dude, they're like, oh, no. So hypocritical.
Can you give the distinction between grandiose and vulnerable narcissism? Because most people are familiar with grandiose narcissism, right? The overt kind of,
absolutely,
narcissist that we're most familiar with. But there's many different facets of narcissism.
But we tend to say like, oh, that person's a narcissist, and it immediately like separates humans from each other.
Right.
Like, oh, my partner doesn't pay attention to all my needs. They're the narcissist. Right. But there are different types of narcissism, and that is true and very important to distinguish. There is the obvious kind of grandiose, puffed up kind. So there certainly are differences among people. So some people do kind of have this kind of attitude of like, I'm entitled to things because I'm superior superior. I don't know if you can think of anyone, but people who like kind of walk around with a puffed out chest and they're like, oh, I'll take that, because they think they're superior to everyone. Right?
Tim says, this is my first time catching you live. I expect your undivided attention and devotion. What?
And it's a vibe. I'm sure you must have met someone in your life who has that vibe.
Yes.
I sit like that all the time. Cross
too,
legged.
so I probably have that. It's a vibe.
Yeah.
Not as much that.
Not as much.
Yeah, I totally hear that.
But vulnerable narcissism is a very different vibe.
Yeah.
Vulnerable narcissism is I feel entitled to things because I've suffered in the past. Right. And I think we all have to be wary about that. That is a psychological principle. I call it the entitlement paradox, which is that the more that we have faced hardships in our past, the more likely we are to kind of think that we're entitled to things that we don't have, that others have, and that can actually go down a very dark path and not lead to growth at all. So all this is in the service of helping people with growth. I'm not in the business of labeling. I'm not in the business of, like, if a label or if a set of something I'm talking about doesn't resonate with someone in a helpful way, then forget it. I don't want to, like, that person's a vulnerable narcissist. That person's a grandiose narcissist. Right. And by the way, there's lots of other types of narcissism. You can go, there's communal narcissism. So those are those who, they're like, I'm going to be the best in the world at helping people. Like me, and one of the items on the questionnaire is me and me alone will save the world. Yeah. That's communal narcissism. Yeah. So there's all different. The need to regulate our self-esteem is a really big one. And there's lots of different ways and outlets upon which we do it. I've also studied another form, toxic altruism. So those are people who are desperate to be needed. So on the scale are things like I need to be needed. And that's actually a form of narcissism, because you find that those individuals actually tend to have a lot of strife with others. They're not actually helping out the others. They're only helping others to the extent to which it feeds their ego. They're not actually really doing the real felt needs of the other person.
Yeah, they're helping others because it helps their sense of self in a certain way.
Exactly. They actually score well in empathy measures, which is fascinating. So there's all these different facets, but I just want to be clear that we all have all these potentials within us. Right. I'm not a big fan of labeling, but the quite interesting question is, what extent does all that stuff inhibit our growth? Right. A lot of those are avoidance mechanisms to avoid facing maybe our imperfections in a way. They're defense mechanisms.
Does vulnerable narcissists or communal narcissists or grandiose, does it stem from the same feeling of lack of self within, or why do they manifest differently?
They're very different. Self-esteem is different, so you tend to find very low self-esteem among vulnerable narcissism, whereas you do find pretty high self-esteem among grandiose narcissism. It's not a stable self-esteem in either case. Both are dependent on others, right? So like the grandiose narcissist almost needs, like, it's like crack. They need validation, right? Like they need to surround themselves with people who are constantly, kissing their butt, But with vulnerable narcissism, it's a little bit different, because it's a lot more, there's a lot more shame involved. You almost have a little more compassion for vulnerable narcissists than you do grandiose narcissists, because grandiose narcissists will never go to the clinician's couch, right? I have a friend who, a big time narcissism researcher and clinical psychologist. He said the only time that grandiose narcissists ever ends up on the couch is when their girlfriend made them come. Or someone's like, you got to see something. But the vulnerable narcissist will seek out therapy, and they know something's not right. That, like, well, I shouldn't say something's not right. That wasn't a good way of putting it. But something, they're not reaching their goals in the best possible way, because there's a lot of shame. A lot of those folks, the paradox there, I mentioned the entitlement paradox. The paradox is a very interesting one, which is that they feel rotten at the core. And yet they feel like...
Jack just said one-on-one is the best. Attention to details. Wholeheartedly agree. Hear.
Angry that the world has not given them everything they deserve. And that, to me, that's a fascinating juxtaposition.
Yeah. What does that stem from? You looked into that, I'm sure.
Well, trauma.
Yeah.
And there is a general psychological mechanism, which is, if you feel like you've been wronged, you're more likely to feel entitled to take things that maybe you didn't earn. But I think that's part of being human, and we all need to be aware of
it. All right. So right here, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We hear a lot about crypto, but here's the part most people miss. Crypto was created so you could actually own and control your money. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding your money, delaying transfers, or limiting access, you're in control. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you've felt that problem. Now, fast forward to today, everyone's heard of crypto, but getting started still feels complicated. That's exactly why I use Rumble Wallet. It takes all that complexity and makes it simple. Choose what you want: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, or even digital gold backed by real gold. No complicated setup. It connects with MoonPay, so you can use your credit card, debit card, or bank and be up and running in minutes. Once you're set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators like me directly. So do this now. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and download Rumble Wallet. From there, you can set up your wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game. In just a few minutes, you can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. All right. So I have one more video on kind of the entitlement stuff. Still in that vein.
Hi, my name is Brother Mike Schmitz, and this is Ascension Presents. So years ago, I was riding in a taxi cab, and if you're from the small town Minnesota that I'm from, like riding in a taxi cab is kind of an exciting experience to have because we don't have many taxis around here. Anyways, I was in it, I was excited, so I was talking to the driver, and he was just this incredibly joyful and incredibly grateful man. And so I was talking with him about, like, what is it you love about your job? And then I asked him, like, what is it that you find difficult these days driving a cab? And he without even hesitating, he said, he says, many people out here driving on the road are so entitled. Like, what do you mean? He said, well, everyone's got somewhere to go, and if you are in their way, you're holding them back from where they need to go, and you are simply an obstacle. Because why? Because they're entitled to get where they need to go. And they don't even take into, this is what he said, they don't even take into consideration that we're on the road. We all have somewhere to go. We all have somewhere we need to be at a certain time. But that sense of entitlement is, no, I have a right for you to get out of my way. Because that's what entitlement is, right? And entitlement is when we mistakenly perceive a need or a desire as our right. To be entitled, to have a sense of entitlement, is when we mistakenly perceive a need, a legitimate need that we have, or a legitimate desire we have, as something that we deserve. But we have to realize that there are many needs we have, many desires we have, that we don't deserve in any way. Now, there are some things that we do have a right to. Dr. John Townsend wrote a book called The Entitlement Cure. And I remember when I picked it up, I thought, oh, this would be good. This would be good for those dang millennials, Because, oh my gosh, how many times, if you're a millennial watching this, how many times do people accuse you of the entitlement generation? That might be the case for some people.
Caddy, thank you for the Rumble rant. She says, good subject. Hope to see you doing more of these shows. Tune in every Saturday and you will see more of the non-political stuff. It can be psychology / conspiracies, but mostly always tied back to psychology and breaking the matrix. So thank you so much for your support. I appreciate you for that Rumble rant, Caddy. Thank you.
But he says, while some people approach life with this universal entitlement, everything is owed to them, almost everyone approaches the universe with what he calls a pocket entitlement, sense of pocket entitlement, which is that not everywhere do people owe me things, not do I have rights, I don't just have a right to do anything, but there's some areas in my life that I think, no, I'm entitled to this, I deserve this, I have a right to this. And as I was reading it, I thought, this is not a generational thing at all, this is just a fallen human thing. There are certain rights we have. He says we have earned rights. For example, if you said to your employer, I will give you this much work, and your employer said, well, if you do that much work, then you have these many benefits. And if he was going to withhold those benefits, you could say, no, I've earned those benefits. That would be the case. That'd be true. They are your right, because that was the agreement. You earned those rights. He also pointed out that there are certain things called contractual rights. For example, living in the United States. In the United States, you have a right of free speech. You have a right to bear arms. You have your rights, right? And as long as you live in the United States as a citizen here, you don't, again, do something to give away those rights. You have that right. It's a contractual right. You can appeal to and say, no, this was given to me by virtue of my being a citizen. So there are earned rights and there's contractual rights. Again, but the mistake a lot of us fall into is thinking that merely everything I need or everything that I desire is something that I deserve. Dr. John Townsend, he talks about this. He says when he raised his kids, he made it very clear to them. He said, okay, there's going to be a lot of things that you need growing up. You need shelter. You need love. You need us to set boundaries. You need us to feed you. You need all these things. We'll give them to you as free gifts, but you don't deserve any of them. I think about how radically different that is, that you're going to be given these things as gifts, because you need them, because we love you, but you don't have a right to them. Now, someone can debate that, someone can argue that, and go ahead, please do that. It's not my thing, it's the guy who wrote the books thing. But I think there's something about that resonates. Why? Because when I start seeing things as my right, I will automatically stop seeing them as a gift. And if they're my right, then I'm not grateful for them. Because why? Because I deserve this. I'm owed this from someone. Somewhere in the world owes me something. But this is one of these massively huge things for us Christians to understand. That the world doesn't owe me anything. I mean, even think about this. God doesn't owe me anything. This is a hard word. I don't mean to be too harsh. But to understand this, it's all a gift. It's not my right. I'm not entitled to this. Mm-hmm. It is completely a gift. Mm-hmm. If they're gifts, then I can be grateful for them. If they're gifts, I can
And so is your presence for someone else. They are not entitled to you. Your presence in their life is a gift. And if they choose to squander that, that is on them. And these people that believe that they're entitled to access to you are deeply mentally disturbed and have a serious neglected inner child inside.
Joy in them. If they're gifts, I have someone to thank for a gift. And that's what Thanksgiving is all about, right? That's what the Eucharist, Eucharistia means Thanksgiving. That's what praise is all about. That's why your parents taught you, say thank you. Why? Because it's not your right. It's just a gift. So here's a question. Today in your life, do you have things that you don't deserve? Or the things that you've been given that aren't your right, you weren't entitled to, but they're just a gift? The proper response to that is thank you. The proper response to that is gratitude. And the more and more you and I live realizing that there's very, very few things that I have a right to, very few things that I deserve, but I have so many gifts, the more gratitude, the more joy, and the more absolute love we'll experience in this life. I invite you to take a moment today. Look at the gifts you've been given, not as rights, not as things you deserved, but as gifts. Take a moment and give thanks for those gifts.
Thank you, God.
I promise it is a recipe.
Everything.
For joy.
Thank you for being on this side of the ground. Thank you for the shelter, even though it's an extended stay. Thank you for the food. Thank you for my pets. Thank you for the fishing today. Thank you for the fellowship. Thank you for the sunlight. I would much rather see the sun rise every day and live a humble existence than a lavish one where I'm stressed all day long. I just thank God every day for being on this side of the ground. Now let's talk about control. Many stalking behaviors are less about affection and more about maintaining influence over you and controlling you. Knowing that they can control your emotions, knowing that they can control your thoughts and behaviors gives them a satisfaction internally, even if they're the only one receiving that satisfaction or knows about you unknowingly complying to their manipulations. Even negative attention can become rewarding if it reinforces a sense of connection in their mind or if it gives them more control. Tim says, glad I caught you live. Unfortunately, my bed is dominating me. Family is preparing to move this week and it's exhausting. Have a great night. Love your content. Amen. Praise God for his gifts. Thank you, Tim. Please make sure you come back and join us another day. I'm on almost every night at 9 or 10 o'clock. All right, let's get into this next video about control.
Hey Jim, what are some signs that our person is becoming controlling?
When they repeatedly violate your boundaries, when they don't respect your boundaries, when they continue to do things that you've already told them, you don't like it when I do that. Sometimes a person can be controlling when they become overprotective. They can almost infantilize somebody to the point where they feel like, you're only safe when you're around me. They'll go with you everywhere. But then they start to question who you're with and who you're texting. They begin to micromanage your life and demand that you answer a text message or a phone call immediately. Controlling behavior is isolating somebody from their friends, from their family. Chronic criticism and gaslighting leads to control. It becomes a form of mental and emotional control. And when they start to make decisions and make plans for you without actually asking you, those are some signs that a person is starting to become controlling.
Hey Jim, what are some signs that our person is becoming controlling?
When they repeatedly violate.
All right, the manipulation formula: create uncertainty, offer certainty, make the solution costly, emotionally or otherwise, position themselves as the solution provider, and then repeat the cycle with different uncertainties. It says excessive control. Hold on. Oh my God. Come on. You try to control everything around you because your internal chaos scares you. What does they mean by your internal chaos? That is your inner child. Grew up with chaos. So now you've developed the need to prevent chaos. So now you've become very controlling. What do you gain by losing yourself in control? What do you gain by losing yourself in control? God is in control. That's right, MC. God is the man. All right. So let's talk about some cognitive distortions that a stalker possesses. So a reoccurring psychological feature is the tendency to misinterpret events. For example, they blocked me because they're testing me. They secretly want me to keep trying. They posted that quote because it's about me. The person basically begins constructing an internal narrative that reinforces their obsession.
Cognitive distortions are exaggerated and negatively biased patterns of thinking that lead to negative emotional reactions. With all or nothing thinking, we see things as black or white with no shades of gray in between.
Good night, MC.
Things are either all good or all bad. Overgeneralization involves seeing a single negative event as a never-ending pattern of failure or defeat. Labeling is a form of all or nothing thinking and overgeneralization, where we judge and label ourselves based on a single event or attribute that doesn't really define who we are. Personalization involves holding ourselves personally responsible for a situation that's not entirely under our control, and we end up completely blaming ourselves even when we may only be partially responsible or not responsible at all. Once we learn to recognize these cognitive distortions in our own thinking, we can modify these thoughts and make them more accurate in order to improve our moods and how we feel. Cognitive distortions are exaggerated and negative.
Attachment is the strong bond between a child, an infant, and their caregiver. When this strong bond is broken, a child can have, as a result, a reactive attachment or an attachment disorder. There are many reasons that this bond can be broken. Sometimes the parent is simply unavailable. The child is not consoled when they're crying. The child's needs are not met when they're hungry or when they're in need of a touch, a hug, a smile. Sometimes this attachment...
So this is in reference to what's broken in terms of their inner child.
Or bond is broken if a parent is unavailable. Attachment disorders and reactive attachment issues are very commonly seen in foster children or children that have been adopted. Some of the signs and symptoms of a child experiencing attachment issues include a child that is often angry, a child that has difficulty maintaining control or wants to control many circumstances. Children with attachment issues also don't like to be physically touched, and they're not comforted by hugs or affection from their parents or caregivers. Children with attachment issues and their family need to meet with a clinical professional in order to help smooth this bond and have more successful relationships. If you're a parent with a child with attachment issues, it's very important to be patient and remain calm. Building and growing this bond and attachment really takes time. It's also important as a parent to manage your stress. There are going to be times when things are very difficult and you need to take care of yourself. Approach these difficult situations with laughter and humor, and this really can also add to strengthening the bond between you and your child. While reactive attachment and attachment disorders are complex and really quite involved in their treatment, these are just a few of the important tips that are important for parents to understand regarding this disorder.
All right. Whoops.
Hey there, my name is Andy.
I did not mean to play that. All right, so now we're going to get into the different types of stalkers. Here we go. So the research has identified several very broad patterns. Real individuals, real stalker individuals may not neatly fit into one category. So don't trick yourself with that. You have the rejected stalker. Remember earlier we were talking about, hold on, shit. All right. So earlier we were talking about the different types. So the rejected stalker often follows the end of a relationship or some kind of perceived rejection. Their primary motivation here is, to maintain contact. Now you have the intimacy seeker. This person believes a relationship exists or will exist despite very little interactions or no evidence to show that. And they often interpret ordinary interactions as signs of hidden affection. And then you have the incompetent suitor, very closely related to the intimacy-seeking stalker. So this person lacks a lot of social awareness, and they will repeatedly ignore rejection while continuing attempts at contact. The resentful stalker is motivated by anger or some sort of perceived injustice, and the goal is often intimidation rather than romance. The predatory stalker, which is the rarest, but potentially the most dangerous type, is motivated by planning, surveillance, or fantasies involving future harm on the victim. So let's get into that just a little bit.
Former, sometimes current partners would be the most common type of stalker. Now, for a current partner who stalks, they could be maybe obsessed with knowing everything about their partner, their whereabouts, their activities, even following them when they go out. They could experience an intense anger and intense anxiety if they don't know where the partner is, if they feel they have no control over the partner. 80% of people who have been in abusive relationships have claimed that they were stalked by their partner during the relationship. For an ex-partner, the loss of relationship can feel like a bereavement. They want to keep some kind of contact, but it is not reciprocal. Now, some may just disappear into the background, watch from a distance. Other times, it can be more sinister, more threatening. Stalking from a former partner tends to be more persistent and usually lasts longer. Former, sometimes current partners would be the most common type of stalker. Now, for a current partner who stalks,
toxic,
they could
MC?
be maybe obsessed with knowing everything about their partner, their whereabouts, their activities, even following them when they go out. They could experience an intense anger and intense anxiety if they don't know where the partner is, if they feel they have no control over the partner. 80% of people who have been in abusive relationships have claimed that they were stalked by their partner during the relationship. For an ex-partner, the loss of relationship can feel like a bereavement. They want to keep some kind of contact, but it is not reciprocal. Now, some may just disappear into the background, watch from a distance. Other times, it can be more sinister, more threatening. Stalking from a former partner tends to be more persistent and usually lasts longer. Former, sometimes current partners would be the most common type of stalker.
Okay. Next video. He's Irish.
So continuing my series about stalking, let's talk about the rejected stalker. Rejected stalkers are usually formed out of a severing of a close relationship. Usually it can be romantic partners, but it can also include friends and family. Two main types of motivation have been established in the mindset of these stalkers, and it is either reconciliation or revenge. A rejected stalker who's looking at reconciliation as their motivation believes that constantly putting themselves in front of their victim may bring back the relationship. And by doing this, they start to feel a closeness with their victim again that kind of replaces the closeness they had during the relationship. One of these stalkers who is looking for revenge is also looking to bring up their self-esteem that they feel they lost by having the relationship end. This can be a hard one for people outside of the situation to detect due to the previous close relationship. The stalker may try to brush off his friends and family's concerns as relationship trouble, claiming things as a rough patch or a trial separation. We have to look carefully at this one. So continuing my series about stalking, let's talk about the rejected stalker.
That there are those among us who will stalk you even for years, even if you've never been a partner of theirs, out of a weird, sadistic desire to possess you. They find psychological gratification in the fantasized possession of you by being able to view you in secret in a voyeuristic way and imagine possessing you gives them a sadistic pleasure. They particularly get a charge when they know that that attention is unwanted, that it deeply disturbs you, and that makes them even happier. Here are the 4 different aspects of this type of possessive fantasy that's very disturbing. One is the hidden beholder fantasy. This is where narcissists and psychopaths take pleasure in knowing that they're watching you, that they know where you are, what you're doing, and who you're doing it with, even though you don't know that they're watching. And it gives them a sense of omniscience, like so almost an erotic way, because it gives them a sense of being godlike. They get this control and power over you. Sort of a form of dominance through invisibility. It's about getting to possess you and never letting you go, all on their terms. Secondly, the unwantedness gives them a thrill. It heightens their experience to know that you're upset about it. It's for them an act of defiance, and they get to take sadistic pleasure because they're crossing a boundary with you that you can't stop. And they know it hurts you, and this delights them. Thirdly, it's objectification with active malice. The stalking isn't about a relationship. They've turned you into a prop or a doll in which they get to manipulate and move in the way that they want. They get to take this hidden pleasure knowing that they're in control of watching you on their terms. And fourthly, it's a form of symbolic ownership. They get to cling to the idea that you're mine and that you always will be mine, and you have no say-so in that you belong to me, and I've frozen you in this connection with me that you have no choice or control over. This happens more than we're aware of, and if it's happening to you, please drop a comment and share a little bit more about it, because I'd like to get...
Here's something I've learned from working with stalkers. A lot of stalking is based on erotomanic delusions. The person is believing that they have a relationship with you or they are in love with you, and they truly believe it's happening. The victim is the most safe when the stalker starts to be infatuated by somebody else. The delusion gets put onto someone else. Think of that TV show, You.
Scary, though.
It's actually very true.
Yeah.
Here's something I've learned from working with...
The TV show You. You want to understand a stalker? You should watch it. For sure. Hey, quiet down. All right, let's keep going.
There are 2 types of stalking motivations that often get confused. These are intimacy seeking and incompetent suitors. So we are going to try to provide a brief description as well as some comparisons to help you understand better the distinctions between them. First, intimacy seekers are likely to stalk strangers, generally selecting victims of elevated social status or prominence. However, they have a lower incidence of violence compared to other stalkers, but are equally likely to make threats, and they are among the most persistent. Incompetent suitors will stalk strangers who frequently find that by virtue of physical attractiveness and being in the wrong place at the wrong time, they are subject to pursuit from an individual who is impervious to rejection. Victims report crude attempts at courting, often receiving gifts, especially on holidays. Intimacy seekers and incompetent suitors together account for the majority of stranger stalkers. Stalkers may admire them from afar for a while before subjecting them to more overt pursuits. Both intimacy-seeking stalkers and incompetent suitors are attempting to establish a relationship with their target, but the factors which predispose them to stalking are sufficiently different to allow us to distinguish the 2 types. Intimacy seekers are motivated by the desire to establish or assert a relationship with their victim that could be characterized as a loving or intimate romantic relationship. Intimacy seekers are typically older than other types of stalkers, almost always emerging in the context of social isolation. This is the only type of stalker where women predominate. Research suggests that intimacy seeking is the most persistent form of stalking. Insulated from reality, they pursue their victim with the confidence and hope oblivious to rejection. The satisfaction of being in love can sustain them indefinitely. Occasionally, a rejection will penetrate their defenses, causing a period of despair or even rage. However, they usually reestablish their belief in the future of the relationship. Stalkers who fall into the incompetent suitor category cover a wide range of individuals. All are somewhat socially impaired, particularly in their courting skills. At one end are the intellectually limited, who pursue with insensitivity. At the other are what has been described as extreme caricatures of a typical male, asserting, overbearing egoists. In between are the overeager, poorly socialized. Though men predominate, they can be any gender. Incompetent suitors usually pursue their victim for relatively brief periods. They have the lowest average length of pursuit. However, they have the highest recurrence rate, often selecting new victims.
Let's briefly hit pause. We have an entire video on what you should know about stalking recurrence. We'll link to it at the end. And you can, of course, find it on our YouTube page. Now, back to the video.
Incompetent suitors usually favor approaches over communications. The behavior of the incompetent type can be characterized as failing to abide by the basic social rules governing courtship rituals. Incompetent suitor targets can respond initially with surprise or fear due to the intrusiveness. Incompetent suitors typically make repeated intrusions in inappropriate contexts. There is a wide spectrum of disjunction between the real situation and the stalker's beliefs. At one extreme are those convinced that the target is in love with the stalker, despite any evidence. This may be driven by the greater likelihood of mental illness in the intimacy seeker than in the incompetent suitor. At the other end is the stalker's assertion of their right to begin a relationship with an unwilling party. In between are those who believe they love the target, but know it is not reciprocated, yet with varying convictions, believe eventually they will. What differentiates them is how they push their claims, driven by self-centeredness. What they share is a sense of entitlement, self-centeredness, and a blindness to the wishes of their victim. Remember, stalking is defined as communications and approaches that are unwanted. These intrusions are distressing, or the pursuit could cause distress in a reasonable person.
Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe. One common question people have is, what is the difference between rejected and resentful stalkers? Aren't they basically the same thing? In this video, I'm going to explain the differences in both motivations for stalking and the relationship between stalker and victim, called typology. Rejected stalking is one of the most common motivations for stalking. It usually results from the dissolution of a close relationship. This type of stalking begins after one person has attempted to end a relationship or indicated that they intend to end a relationship. These are collectively known as ex-intimates. Most commonly, this is recognized as a breakdown of an intimate sexual relationship, but it can be any close relationship where there is an emotional investment, including other family, friends, business partners, even long-term caregivers, for example. The rejected stalker gains satisfaction from the forced contact that substitutes for actual closeness and the imposed communications that replace genuine interactions. The main point is that the rejected stalker is angry at what feels to them like an irreplaceable loss, combined with the humiliation from the victim's unilateral decision to end the relationship. There are 3 types of rejected stalkers: reconciliation, vengeful, and mixed. To understand the differences between resentful and vengeful rejected stalkers, one must keep in mind that the rejected stalkers have a pre-existing relationship.
She got some crazy looking
Resentful
eyes.
stalkers can be either planning revenge against an individual or expressing their rage at the world through the vindictive pursuit of someone who embodies all those who have, in their view, humiliated and harmed them in the past. These stalkers come to believe they are the innocent targets of someone else's vindictiveness. When they do retaliate, they believe they are acting righteously. The resentful stalker is a person whose resentment against an unfeeling and rejecting world comes before the event which precipitated the stalking. Their resentment is channeled into harassment and focused on the victim. Most resentful stalkers will not have a close pre-existing relationship like the rejected stalker does. Some might have had interactions such as co-workers or neighbors, but the motivation isn't the breakdown of the close relationship as it is for rejected stalkers. Rejected stalkers are emotionally stuck. They don't know how to move on or how to live their life without the other person. They don't understand how the other person could have left them. Resentful stalkers are mad at the world, and the victim is the surrogate for all those believed to have ever harmed them. They usually view themselves as the wounded party, defending themselves by striking back at their oppressor, but not necessarily as an avenger. Rejected stalkers are more likely to employ intimidation and assault behaviors as part of their pursuit. The functional realities and practicalities of ending close relationships can draw victims back into contact. The patterns of victims' and stalkers' lives based on the past relationships are such that they may have knowledge of or share common places of leisure or work. Thus, rejected stalkers are very likely to show up at a victim's workplace. A victim's mixed emotions may persuade them to attempt to resolve the stalking by meeting and talking with the stalker. Resentful stalkers are more likely to employ covert, lengthy campaigns of harassment.
Her desk in the back looks like it has eyes.
The more extended episodes of stalking will usually be pursued anonymously at first. This is especially the case between strangers, where the stalker's unfamiliarity creates confusion and alarm. Resentful stalkers can either be seeking planned revenge against an individual, such as against a neighbor who repeatedly parks in their parking space, or expressing their rage at the world through their vindictive pursuit of someone who has come to represent all of those who have humiliated them in the past. This is also common in instances where a supervisor or coworker has ignited the stalker's fury by a specific act, making them a target, or where the stalker may express general resentment
against the business.
She sounds like me when I do my ad reads.
Often, victims are surrogates for the type of people the stalker believes has humiliated them through their entire life. Thus, CEOs, managers, and others who are responsible for giving feedback or performance reviews for employees are at particular risk of being targeted, especially if the potential stalker is fired from their job. Healthcare providers, lawyers, and teachers are also vulnerable to resentful stalking. However, termination of long-term therapeutic relationships occasionally gives rise to rejected stalking patterns. Thus, we see it is the nature of the relationship that largely defines the differences between rejected stalking.
A patient
and
starts stalking their therapist. That has happened many times.
Resentful stalking behaviors. Thank you so much.
All right, last video.
Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the construct of gang stalking. So sometimes with this construct, the people who believe they are subjected to it call themselves targeted individuals. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So before I talk about the construct of gang stalking, I think it's important to distinguish this construct from what's referred to as individual stalking. I guess one could use the terms regular or traditional stalking as well, although that seems a little unusual to put it that way. So the idea is that when we think of the word stalking, we think of one person who is going after another, right? So I'm going to use the person A, person B situation. So person A is the stalker and person B is the victim. So the way we think of it is that person A is connected to person B in some way, or they used to be connected with person B. Person A engages in a pattern of behavior where they watch person B, they follow person B, they attempt to contact them in multiple ways like calling, texting, emailing, sending letters, and sometimes person A even threatens person B. This construct of individual stalking is sometimes referred to as unwanted pursuit behavior, although stalking doesn't have to be associated with some type of romantic relationship. It almost always is, but again, it doesn't have to be. So individual...
You like when I'm adjusting the locks? I have like sensory issues with my hair, but I refuse to cut it short and it drives me crazy. And then it also gets like tangled up with my ear monitor. I'm fidgety with my hair. I also am a hairdresser, so I kind of have a propensity to touch hair anyway, so it's a problem.
Individual stalking is fairly common. At some point in their lives, 8% of women and 2% of men will be victims of this type of behavior. Gang stalking or group stalking is quite a bit different. It involves the use of multiple individuals to stalk, harass, or threaten a victim. The group must have at least 3 people in it and must be organized with a clear purpose. So we're not talking about stalking by proxy. So we're not talking about a situation where person A would hire a number of other people to threaten or spy on person B. Also, online bullying does not count as part of this definition. The phenomenon of gang stalking or group stalking is also reported much less than individual stalking. About 0.66% of adult women and 0.17% of adult men will have the subjective experience of being gang stalked at some point in their lives. Now, when approaching this subject from a neutral stance, like scientists would if they were conducting a study, the assumption would be that gang stalking could be real. Like there could be a lot of people out there who are actually experiencing this, or it could be, in many cases, part of a delusion. This behavior is distressing to people if it's real and if it's a delusion. So either way, it's important to get a better understanding of this construct. In 2015, an exploratory study on gang stalking was published. In the study, the researchers compared gang stalking to individual stalking and noted a number of characteristics of the victims of gang stalking that distinguished them from victims of individual stalking. In the study, gang stalking victims tended to be mostly female. The stalking behavior lasted longer than what we tend to see with individual stalking. Almost all of the participants had no idea who the stalker was. Very few thought it was a former partner. That's quite different from individual stalking, where people would almost always know who the perpetrator was. We see that there was little or no unwanted communication in the form of letters, emails, and texts. They were more likely to report being spied on, secretly photographed, and having lies spread about them. They were more likely to be scared, depressed, have post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, increased aggressiveness, and increased distrust. They were less likely to believe stalking had changed their personality. We see they are also more likely to report disruptions in their lives across many areas. Just a few examples: they tend to be more fearful about going out, their work performance was affected, they give up on social activities more, lose friends, they're more likely to carry a weapon, and probably most importantly, they tend to be more delusional. When putting all these clues together, it seems pretty clear that most victims of gang stalking are experiencing delusions. And this theory about delusions really explains a lot. It explains why they can't identify who's doing the stalking, why they're not getting written or digital communication, and why they experienced the stalking for such a long duration. Even though individual stalkers can stay around for a while, eventually, they usually give up. But with the gang stalking, we see that it goes on for many years. There are many different ways to divide the subjective experience of gang stalking into categories. There are certain categories or beliefs that occur more frequently than others. Here's a list of some of the more popular categories of beliefs from a qualitative study. After each category, I'll provide some of the exemplar quotes for that category from the study. I will paraphrase some of the quotes. So looking at the categories, we see that being followed occurs about 90% of the time. So 90% of the people who have the subjective experience of gang stalking endorsed this category. They believe they were being watched or followed. For example, I am followed by people wearing elaborate disguises, and cars are tailgating me, and the drivers are using walkie-talkies. Next category, multiple agencies are involved in the conspiracy. 80% believe this. So the government is behind it all with help of local police, and the people are recruited by Homeland Security from Craigslist and the FBI. So I've heard about Homeland Security and the FBI as part of gang stalking. I haven't heard of Craigslist coming up too much. Next category is electronic surveillance, 60% here. My home is bugged, and I'm a victim of 24/7 covert electronic surveillance. We see physical interference, 60%. So people are blocking me with grocery carts, people are invading my personal space, people on the street are running into me, and I've been forced off the road numerous times by cars when driving. Mind control is at 40%. The government is fully able to take control of everyone's thoughts, and they insert thoughts and ideas into my mind, and it took me a while to figure out that the thoughts were not mine. Electronic hacking is common, 40%. All my passwords are compromised, and information from my cell phone was stolen.
Jack, they're
so that
talking
they can
about
arrange
gang
street theater
stalking.
in which well-rehearsed
What
live
gang
dramas.
stalking is multiple people involved. It's usually an agency such as a government that participates in this, and they use many people to constantly intimidate you 24/7. I went through something really similar when I ran for Congress.
Take place. It's like half complaint and half compliment, right? It's like they enjoy the street theater, but they were mad that it was part of a conspiracy. Next category, people sneaking into their house when they're not there, 35% endorse this. People break into my house when I'm not home and move stuff around, and I can't leave my house because they will move around my undergarments. Now, the last two categories are about people who are part of the conspiracy. We see police are part of the conspiracy, that's 30%, and neighbors are part, that's 25%. So we see things like state police helicopters are following me around, and many of my neighbors, but not all, are involved. Now, it's curious why somebody would think certain neighbors are involved and not others. I think a lot of this is based on to what degree those neighbors believe.
Nope, I was followed like that. They even moved someone into my neighborhood to watch me. A few houses down.
The individual who believes they're being gang stalked. So if somebody tends to be a good listener and they tend to believe the person, usually that person will not think that other person is part of the conspiracy. So neighbors that are supportive might not get included in that conspiracy group. We see that these beliefs come with a lot of negative effects, like feeling isolated, and it can cause a desire to counterattack. So why hasn't gang stalking been studied too much? Well, in a way it really has been. Gang stalking is really a version of paranoid and persecutory delusions. What has changed? Why is this now something that's being discussed? Well, it's really about communication, specifically the ability to connect with an online informal community of people who believe the same thing. There's something very powerful about feeling a sense of belonging, even if that connection is made because of a negative experience. Years ago, if somebody had delusions, they would interact mostly with family, friends, and mental health professionals. Now they can reach out to a much wider community.
Now, don't get confused with schizophrenia. There are people with schizophrenia that think that this is happening to them, and so therapists have to weed that out as well.
That's good. They're finding support. In another way, it's unhelpful because it reinforces beliefs that are not positive, that could lead to negative outcomes. These communities often promote behavior like following law enforcement around, following politicians around, mental health professionals, and neighbors. Ironically, many of the people who say they're victims of gang stalking are actually engaging in stalking behavior. There have been a few notable cases where gang stalking has been connected to violence. For example, Aaron Alexis, sometimes called the Navy Yard shooter, who killed 12 people at the Washington, D.C. Navy Yard in 2013. Myron May, who in 2014 shot 3 people in the Florida State University Library. And Gavin Long, who shot and killed 3 Baton Rouge, Louisiana police officers and wounded 3 others in 2016. Looking online, we find material designed to support targeted individuals. But much of that material is not from mental health professionals. Much of it is from people who consider themselves targeted individuals. It's easy to confuse quality information from misinformation. The way that people with these beliefs give advice to others with these beliefs is actually quite telling. Some of this information is written in a way that has good grammar, but the content, of course, is incorrect. A lot of it is really about how the paranoid feelings are justified, how there's a conspiracy, and how you can't let the fact that there's no evidence to support the claim get in the way. They say that mental health professionals, law enforcement, politicians, judges, lawyers, everyone is in on the conspiracy, except, of course, for the targeted individuals. They describe the typical targeted individual as having a very high IQ, a history of political activism, and being influential. It's like they see themselves as threatening to the mainstream.
I wonder who this guy has 1.68 million subscribers. I wonder who's paying his bills. Since he's trying to make everyone believe, anyone that's involved in politics, like my story, I was involved in politics, and he's trying to tell y'all that I had delusions about it. No, I knew it was real when they mailed a packet of photos of me walking around town to my house.
Extreme culture, government, and society in general. One of the main challenges with these types of delusions is it's almost like they were perfectly engineered to prevent someone from getting mental health treatment. The delusions work against attempts to get help. It's ironic how the advice of...
Okay. Let's get into a little bit more about cyber stalking. So basically, technology has for sure transformed stalking. Today, someone doesn't have to basically be physically there, physically following another person to maintain unhealthy surveillance. And examples of this include repeated fake accounts that they will email you from, message you from, follow you from, monitoring every single one of your public posts, sending anonymous emails, impersonating your identity, persistent messaging after you block them, contacting others to gain information about you, tracking your online activity, your chats, or using multiple platforms after being removed from one. Now, the internet provides something psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. Occasionally, seeing new information about the target will reinforce the stalking behavior, making it more likely to continue. So let's look at a few videos I have on that.
Debates around why people engage in online harassment with factors like anonymity, herd mentality, and emotional catharsis under the spotlight. Analyze the reasons of online harassment from aspects of anonymity, herd mentality, and emotional catharsis.
JWink80, I think he seemed like a nice guy, and she should have given him a chance. He was at the end of his speech. So since he was in the section of delusions, I wasn't going to continue on it because that didn't really pertain to what we were talking about. I run my show, and sometimes I don't feel like being on longer than I need to, especially if they're going to repeat themselves. Jack says, that's effed up, Luna. That would be scary and would cause paranoia. Yeah, I felt scared and paranoid for a really long time dealing with that.
Have you ever wondered why some people seem to turn into a different person when they're online engaging in hurtful behavior like harassment? Well, if you've been puzzled by this, you're in the right place. Let's start with those who get caught up in online harassment. They find themselves in a dilemma where they lash out at others through the screen, perhaps saying things they'd never dream of in person. This behavior not only hurts others, but can also leave them with a sense of guilt later. Online anonymity is a double-edged sword, giving people a false sense of security and freedom from consequences.
Thank you, MC.
Social identity theory shows herd mentality in online
I do
groups,
have my own show.
leading
This
some
one
to harass others to fit in. Emotional catharsis.
But no, if I got the offer for a bigger show, I would take it. I would take it.
They're venting pent-up emotions in harmful ways. If you're someone who's been part of this, first, recognize that your actions have real-world impacts.
Annoying.
Try to take a step back before you post. For those who are bystanders, don't be afraid to speak up against online harassment. Remember, you have the power to change this. By being more mindful online, we can create a kinder...
Okay, next video.
Anonymity breeds animosity. Cyberbullying doesn't start with hate, it starts with distance. The shield of anonymity, no face, no immediate consequences, reduced sense of accountability. The power effect, group validation fuels behavior. Attention becomes a reward. Empathy weakens behind screens. The disconnect, words feel lighter online. Harm feels invisible to the attacker.
Yeah, JWink.
Impact feels very real to the victim.
The thing about it is, it's not so easy for them to just put their phone down and stop looking at it because of that obsession that we were talking about and control and wanting to watch others react. They get an emotional high out of it. So it's not so, it's easy to say for us because we're not insane that way. But yeah.
Understanding digital behavior is part of modern cybersecurity. Explore Master of Science in Cybersecurity. Details and description. Apply now.
Oh, apply at this university. Nice ad. I don't like that video. That was a pointless video. Here we go.
Ever get the feeling you're being watched? Well, you just might be. Only it's online, not in person. But the psychological impact is just as bad. Cyber stalking is when the internet is used to harass someone on the internet, usually following them through their social media posts and giving them unwanted attention. Because it's usually through text, it may sound less damaging than being physically followed, but the effects are almost just as bad. Victims feel confusion, self-doubt, embarrassment, paranoid, and anxious. It makes you feel targeted and vulnerable. This can also turn into physical problems, like sleeping problems, headaches, and weight loss. Cyber stalking and online harassment is easier than ever. Fake accounts take mere minutes to set up, and it's difficult to identify them. The best way to stop it is to report them. Make your account private and take some time away from social media. Ever get the feeling you're...
Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Christine Belford? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Christine Belford was born on November 22, 1973, and lived in Wilmington, Delaware. She worked as a teacher at a Catholic school. Christine married in her early 20s and had a child. She divorced in 1998. In 1999, Christine became romantically involved with an optometrist named David Matusewicz after she started working for his practice. David was from New Jersey and was 6 years older than Christine. Just like Christine, he had been married before. On October 13, 2001, the couple married. They went on to have 3 children. Christine suffered from depression and was treated by mental health professionals. David was not supportive of her recovery effort. In 2003, David's parents, Thomas and Lenore, moved into the family home. This arrangement caused a lot of tension. David's parents were controlling and did not get along well with Christine. These conditions only made Christine's symptoms of depression worse. In early 2006, Christine separated from David and moved out of the family home. The divorce was finalized in November of that year. A bitter custody dispute followed. David and his parents implied that Christine's mental health problems made her an unfit mother. On February 13, 2007, the court ruled that Christine and David would have joint custody of their children. It appeared as though everything was going to settle down and be peaceful. David told Christine that he wanted to take the children to Disney World, and she was not opposed. On August 26, 2007, David departed with the children. Christine thought that he would be back in about 2 weeks. When David failed to return, she contacted the authorities. On September 28 of that same year, the court awarded Christine temporary sole custody of her children. The police contacted David's father, Thomas, and David's sister, Amy Gonzalez. Neither one was too interested in helping the authorities locate the missing children. Thomas and Amy both moved to Edcouch, Texas, which is a small town near the southernmost point of the state. By tracking emails, law enforcement officers figured out that David was in Nicaragua. They visited this country in March 2009 and found David, his mother Lenore, and his 3 children living in an RV. David and his mother were arrested, and the children were returned to Christine. On September 3, 2009, David pleaded guilty to 1 count of international parental kidnapping and 1 count of bank fraud. He received 4 years in prison. On September 10, his mother pleaded guilty to endangering the welfare of a child. Her sentence was 18 months. In January 2010, Christine filed a petition to terminate David's parental rights. The court granted her request in August 2011. During the time that Christine was fighting to terminate David's rights, Lenore launched a defamation campaign complete with a website. She did all this from prison. Among the many accusations, Lenore said that Christine had committed horrible offenses against the children. During this time, Christine became more isolated and afraid. In September 2010, Lenore was released from prison, and she moved to Texas, where Thomas and Amy lived. David joined them when he was released in September 2012. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On January 8, 2013, David was granted permission by the U.S. Probation Office to attend a child support arrearage hearing the next month. The hearing was in the Newcastle County Courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware. He traveled to Delaware with his father Thomas and his mother Lenore, although in his request for permission, he never mentioned that he would have company. On the day of the hearing, February 11, 2013, David and Thomas drove a Honda CR-V to a hotel parking garage not far from the Newcastle County Courthouse. At 7:32 a.m., they walked into the courthouse. David entered the security screening line as Thomas walked around the lobby. David passed through security and made his way to another floor as Thomas remained in the lobby. At about 8 a.m., Christine Belford entered the courthouse along with a friend of hers named Laura Mulford. Thomas produced a Glock 21 semi-automatic pistol chambered in .45 caliber ACP and shot Christine and her friend Laura to death. After a brief shootout with Capitol police officers, Thomas ended his life with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. David was arrested and charged in connection with failing to ask permission to have his parents with him on the trip. The Honda CR-V was searched by the police. It contained several items, including ammunition, an electric shock device, binoculars, restraints, a military-style knife, a bullet-resistant vest, and photographs of Christine's children and residents.
Whoa.
David and his parents had also taken a Honda Civic on the trip, which had been parked in Maryland. In that vehicle, the police found a rifle chambered in .223 Remington, a .357 Magnum revolver, a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, a shovel, and gas cans. 2 days after the shooting, David's sister, Amy Gonzalez, filed a petition for custody of Christine's 3 children, but she would not be successful. Ultimately, David, his mother Lenore, and his sister Amy were charged with conspiracy to commit interstate stalking and cyberstalking resulting in death. David and his mother were also charged with interstate stalking, resulting in death. They went to trial in June of 2015, and they were convicted. All 3 were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lenore managed to escape her sentence when she died on May 6, 2016. At the time I'm making this video, David and his sister Amy continue to serve their life sentences. Now moving to my analysis. The prosecution of David, his mother, and his sister for cyberstalking resulting in death was the first time this law was tested in court. Some people view convicting the trio as an overreach by the government, a way to avenge the murders even though the actual killer was already dead. The government, of course, disagrees. They believe that the behavior of the trio caused Christine's death. In order for the trio to be considered guilty under the cyberstalking charge, Christine's death must have been the result of their conduct in a real and meaningful way, and in the absence of their conduct, the harm would not have occurred. This law can be interpreted like the felony murder rule. The trio was engaged in conduct that led to death, but they did not necessarily have a specific intent to kill. The theory in this case would be that the trio inspired Thomas to carry out the murder, or could reasonably foresee how their behavior would lead to this outcome. This brings me to the question, were David, Lenore, and Amy guilty of cyberstalking resulting in death? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea they were guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. David, Lenore, and Amy harassed and stalked Christine for years. They made several false accusations against Christine using social media, a website, email services, and by mailing letters. They accused her of stealing money, stealing contact lenses, mistreating her children in all types of horrible ways, abandoning one of her daughters in a shopping cart, threatening to sell her children, allowing them to play with dangerous equipment and chemicals, and leaving pills within their reach. In addition, the trio accused Christine of having multiple personality disorder. They employed or directed a few people to obtain personal information about Christine, including a private investigator. Some of these people friended Christine on Facebook and then supplied private information to the trio. At one point, David was even given Christine's Facebook username and password. The trio mailed letters containing defamatory statements to Christine's friends, family members, church, and employers. They repeatedly made anonymous complaints to the Delaware Division of Youth and Family Services. They released personal information about Christine, like license plate numbers of vehicles parked outside her home, photographs of her home, and details about her lovers. The trio uploaded videos of Christine playing with her children outside her residence. Before David, Lenore, and Thomas made their way to Delaware, Thomas looked into funeral arrangements, left his family members combinations for locked compartments in his residence, and gave them instructions related to his property. This shows that Thomas was only interested in a one-way trip. The hearing that Christine was getting ready to attend when she was killed was requested by David. He failed to disclose to the probation office that he could have attended the hearing remotely, and he never told them he would be accompanied by his parents. David, Lenore, and Thomas took 2 vehicles loaded with weapons to Delaware. Video surveillance from a Walmart store captured David and Lenore walking around one of the vehicles with his trunk open. They must have known what Thomas was planning to do. Moving to the exculpatory factors, David, Lenore, and Amy denied having any prior knowledge of the murders. Amy Gonzalez was not on the trip to Delaware. She remained in Texas. Thomas was an adult. He had once been a police officer. He was certainly capable of making his own decisions. Maybe he decided to commit the murders on his own. If the trio did have prior knowledge, why would they have allowed Thomas to commit the murders in the manner that he did? Why not have Thomas travel to Delaware alone and simply kill Christine? David and Lenore did not need to be in the area. They exposed themselves to more risk for absolutely no reason. At the time of the murders, David had cash in his pocket, presumably to pay his child support. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I think the trio was guilty of cyberstalking resulting in death? In my opinion, David and Lenore were guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. They went on the trip to Delaware so David could attend a hearing which could have been attended remotely. As far as Amy's involvement, I am not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. I think she was guilty of cyberstalking, but not the resulting in death part. She deserved a long prison sentence, but not life without the possibility of parole. What do I think happened in this case?
Should not
this
have
is just
been
a theory,
involved.
my opinion. David was self-centered, grandiose, irresponsible, remorseless, antagonistic, paranoid, aggressive, vindictive, petty, volatile, and had a sense of entitlement. He came to believe that the government was persecuting him by keeping him from his children. His parents and his sister shared many of his beliefs and many of his negative characteristics.
They reinforced it.
Thomas and Lenore wanted access to David's children and viewed Christine as the enemy.
Right.
They were willing to do whatever was necessary to achieve their goal.
Right.
After conducting a stalking campaign for years, it became clear they were not going to win.
Prey.
Thomas decided that he would give up his own life in order to kill Christine. It never occurred to the remaining family members that they could be held accountable and sentenced to life in prison. This is why they didn't come up with a plan that kept them separated from Thomas. The crime could have been carried out in a much easier way, but perhaps Thomas wanted to kill Christine in the courthouse to send an anti-government message.
Right.
He wanted to show the government that they could not stop him and they could not protect his victim. Now moving to my final thoughts. The verdict in this case may have been controversial, but there's no doubt it sends a clear message. If a person engages in cyberstalking against a victim and that victim dies for any reason, the offender is in serious trouble.
Yep.
It's probably best to avoid cyberstalking, mostly because of the life in prison part. Those are my thoughts in the case of Christine Belford.
All right, and here's the next one. All right, prosecuting digital harms. She's going to talk about the complexities of tackling a cyber stalking case. Annoying music.
I tend to focus on digital harms, and I use that word because harms kind of encompasses sort of the wrongfulness of these acts. A lot of the things that I talk about aren't necessarily crimes under international criminal law yet, or even domestic criminal laws, so you can't really call them crimes. So I use the word harm because that has this connotation of wrongfulness.
All right. So she's got an episode out that is Sarah Zarmsky, if you are interested. Why don't stalkers stop? That's one of the questions victims frequently ask. Is like, why don't they just move on? Well, several psychological mechanisms are contributing here. There's the rumination, the obsessive thinking, and difficulty accepting rejection. And then they also have levels of very poor emotional regulation and a very deep-seated damaged inner child that needs validation constantly. And some individuals become psychologically invested in maintaining the fixation because letting go would require confronting painful emotions like shame and loneliness and grief or failure even. And that fixation just becomes self-reinforcing.
And so at the end of the day, rumination is simply your mind telling itself stories in some sort of anticipatory way to try to circumvent bad things that may happen. It's practicing what are you going to do when your husband dies in a car wreck because he's late coming home from work, or when you find out that she's been cheating on you. It's just this rehearsal. And it was news to me that our body has one fight or flight response, whether there's a bear standing in front of us or whether we are consciously conjuring the bear in our minds, it's still going to kick off the same system. And so we can literally bury ourselves just sitting in the shower, having an imaginary conversation with our boss. We can literally choose to die younger by having an imaginary conversation with the guy in front of us to just cut us off on the way to work.
Absolutely.
Right? And because our body's like, all right, it's time to fight, even though there's not a real threat there.
All right, that's called the trauma brain.
Beware. Rumination makes depression worse. My name is Dr. Simon Sherry, and I'm a professor and a clinical psychologist. Rumination involves repetitive, unconstructive thought. When you ruminate, you brood darkly on negative themes. This makes difficult experiences more accessible. Top of mind are the dark and difficult things in your life when you ruminate. Ruminators often are also sedentary and inactive. They put their head down and get couch locked. This too can promote depression.
That can happen. I
have a
can
stressful
deal with
experience,
rumination for sure.
Rumination also tends to maintain or prolong that stressfulness. That conflict you had in the morning is still bugging you in the evening. Collectively, these factors mean that rumination tends to maintain or even worsen depression.
Sure does.
Beware.
Sure does.
Rumination makes...
All right.
For those of you who don't know, we used to think in research that thought stopping would be effective for us to, in our head, close our eyes and say, stop, that would stop that thought cycle. Turns out, no. But acknowledging it, calling it a thought, and saying, you know what, I don't need to engage with it. We find that to be the most effective. I know. Who knew? Researchers knew. For those of you who don't know, we used to think in research that thought stopping
because he probably has a bunch of unsolved mysteries in his head. Q. In psychology, rumination is the habit of compulsively replaying repetitive, passive, and distressing thoughts without ever reaching a resolution. That's the key difference. You're not reaching a resolution. You're just dwelling on the negative aspects themselves. The word originates from the Latin word ruminare, which describes how cows regurgitate and chew their cud. So in human psychology, it's the mental equivalent of rechewing painful experiences, past mistakes, or perceived failures. And rumination differs from productive problem solving. When solving a problem, the brain will seek out active solutions. But when your brain is ruminating, the brain gets trapped. The mind is ruminating, the brain gets trapped in a passive why loop. Why does this always happen to me? Why did I say that? Which actually will impair your problem solving ability. So according to the APA, or the American Psychological Association, the cycle follows a very predictable pattern. First, the trigger, which is a stressful event and or an awkward social interaction or a dip in mood occurs. Then the individual turns inward, focusing entirely on their distress, and it causes hyper focusing on it. Then the mind will amplify the negative memories and attributes them to the personal inadequacy of the self, which this is the distortion. And then that leads them to a very stuck state, which in the situation basically remains unresolved, and it's draining emotional energy and reinforcing the urge to overthink. I am a chronic overthinker, so I can deal with rumination, and I think gratitude is a very big key in combating rumination, especially like for someone like me who's been born into trauma, and my earliest memories are all negative. It can be very easy for me to just sit there and be like, why me? Why? But, going over this material from time to time, even though I know it, is always a refresher for me mentally, because I may pick up something this time that I missed last time. So there's core types to rumination. So psychologists will split negative thinking into several subtypes, and that's primarily drawn from someone named Susan Nolan Hokusama's her response style theory. And it follows this: the brooding rumination, reflecting rumination, and anger rumination. So brooding rumination is a passive, moody comparison of your current situation against an unachievable ideal standard. And it's highly correlated with long-term depression because it fosters a lot of self-blame. That's a brooding rumination. Now you have reflective rumination, which involves analyzing a situation to find meaning or to learn. While it's still very repetitive for the person, it is considered more adaptive because it seeks more emotional insight. And then you have the anger rumination. This is the act of constantly replaying perceived injustices or insults or past conflicts and wrongdoings, which keeps your feelings of rage active long after the event has passed. Now, there's a difference in rumination versus worry. So while both forms are, in fact, repetitive overthinking, they look in opposite directions. So rumination focuses primarily on the past and the present. It asks, why did this happen? And is very heavily linked to depression. Worry focuses primarily on the future. What if something goes wrong? And this is the defining driver of anxiety. So rumination is depression, living in the past, and worry is living in the future, anxiety. When a person ruminates, brain imaging shows heightened activity in the default mode network, or the DMN. This region that activates during self-referential thought. In a healthy brain, the prefrontal cortex helps the DMN evaluate problems, and then shift away from them. So during deep rumination, this connection in the brain will actually misfire and it traps the mind in a loop. And one of the videos earlier mentioned CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. That teaches you how to exit that loop and reshape your brain, growing new neural pathways. So does DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. So chronic rumination can significantly damage mental well-being by prolonging the depressive episodes, because it acts as a fuel for the depression and it keeps the emotional wounds gaping open and fresh. And then you're just bleeding all over those you love for as long as those wounds are open and unaddressed. Well, because it lacks a solution, an orientation pointed towards solution, it'll trap people in analysis paralysis, which is the paralyzing action. And then it goes on to further damage the relationships, because it can evolve into co-rumination, where friends endlessly rehash problems together without finding solutions. This is common at family reunions, ultimately draining both individuals. So breaking the cycle, psychologists will frequently utilize CBT techniques to help individual, or the cognitive behavioral therapy I mentioned, to help them break out of these loops. And it's basically, we're helping them shift from why to what. So you change the internal script from why did I fail to what I learned from it, and what is one small action that I can take right now. Engaging, that's the first part. Then there's the distraction and then the grounding. So you have to engage in activity that forces your attention outward and away from it, such as aerobics or working out at the gym, running, puzzles, or sensory grounding exercises to bring you back to present. Now you have scheduled rumination. This is limiting overthinking by allocating yourself exactly 15 minutes a day of like worry time. It sounds ridiculous, but it does actually work. Once the timer goes off, you're done. Write the thoughts down and actively pivot to something else. One thing I like to do is set the piece of paper on fire. So I actually change the physics of what I wrote, what I spelled, onto the paper, and send that worry straight up to the divine and let it integrate into the atmospheric energy, and let it take up to heaven. So what are the warning signs? Okay, you have an escalation period. So what are the warning signs of escalation? Most stalking never really becomes violent, I'll say. But professionals do watch for behaviors that may indicate increasing risk, and that can include escalating the frequency of contact, ignoring very explicit requests to stop, attempts to gather private information, appearing unexpectedly in multiple locations, contacting employers or friends and relatives to ask about you. They'll even threaten you, whether it's direct or implied. A threat is a threat. This fixation on you can last months or years. And after rejection, the anger increases. No single behavior will predict violence, but there are clusters of escalating behaviors that do deserve attention. So let's look at some videos here.
What are the signs of stalking? So the signs of stalking are fixated, obsessive, unwanted, and repeated behaviour. It can be a stranger, it can be somebody known to you. It's not just a minor thing, it's something that they're going out of their way to cause you distress, upset, and is having an impact on your daily life.
Q just said, kind of off topic, although I don't think it is off topic, but the government's favorite game to play is causing stress and trauma. They do this to have a more docile population to control. Yeah, and dysfunction. They want trust in others reduced. And when you are isolated, you're left to your own vacuum. And when you have a phone in your pocket and that's your only outside source, it's very easy for the government to then control your thinking after they've traumatized you. COVID was a test in that. Trauma does imprint on the DNA. He is right on that too through the PP3 gene or the PP1 gene. I can't remember which gene it is, but that is called ancestor memories. We see this in mammals like orca, other porpoise, and even humans, rats and mice, where the stresses of the parent are encoded into their DNA as they experience life, and it tells their offspring what to eat, what not to eat, what is a threat, what is not a threat. Maps of migration is buried in the ancestor PP1 gene or PP3 gene, I'm not sure. But yes, like where your mind is at on that. All right, let's get into the next video. Did we watch this one?
What are the signs
we
of
did.
stalking? So the signs of stalking.
3 intuition signs that a person is stalking you. Number 1, the person makes nice conversation with you, but you have an uneasy feeling that they have ulterior motives. Number 2, the person asks you questions about yourself, but you feel uncomfortable that they want more information that is a bit too personal. Number 3, the person seems to know odd things about you that give you an awkward feeling. If you like this, follow me.
Okay.
3 intuition.
When we talk about stalking, it might be something we joke about, think is romantic. Maybe it's something we've only seen in movies. But in real life, it's terrifying, psychologically harmful, and it's a crime. Our guest today is here to talk about this important subject that's misunderstood and often something we minimize. Susan Kidder is CEO of Safe Connections. Thank you so much for coming by. I didn't even know January is Stalking Awareness Month. What is it, and why do we need a month to set aside to talk about this?
Well, to elevate awareness so people understand what stalking is. And stalking is a pattern, and the key word here is pattern. It's a pattern of behavior that targets a specific individual, and that specific individual then feels threatened or intimidated or emotionally distressed because of that stalking behavior.
And where does that cross the line? What would be some of the red flags that this has gone from, oh, someone really cares about me, to this is a crime?
Right. A partner who requires their partner to keep their tracking system on, their GPS locator on their telephone, being followed. And being followed is, you might see someone at the bus stop every day, you might see someone at the gym every day. That's kind of usual and routine. What's not usual or routine or a coincidence is if you see that person when you're at the store, consistently, wherever you're showing up, where you are, at the post office, at your place of business. So that is not normal, and that's not routine.
And you're saying things like even gifts or emails, that can even be considered stalking.
Yes,
Wow.
incessant texts and phone calls, wanting to talk with you, know where you are, make contact with you. And part of that's power and control, which is what we've talked about before, abuse of power, and really designed to threaten and intimidate their target.
And I think some of the more overt signs, like damaging your property or even going through your trash, is that one of the signs?
It sure is. Anything that will be something where they can intimidate, threaten, and have their target feel anxiety. Those are all part of stalking behaviors.
So what should someone do if they're experiencing this? I can imagine how scary it must be.
Absolutely, because it tends to escalate. The upstream solution is prevention, like the work that we do at Safe Connections. Someone who is a survivor of stalking, documentation is very, very important. Contact with law enforcement is very important, so you get the paper trail, you have the incident reports, so that when that person is caught, then you have that background.
So should we call police or call the hotline? What do you recommend should be the first thing we do?
Sure, calling law enforcement is always something very important to do. And folks can also call Safe Connections, because we can help them with safety planning and help talk.
Safe Connections. That's a 24-hour crisis line for stalking. There's the number right there. That is in a specific state, but they can refer you to a similar agency in your state. There's the number there.
Talk them through what kind of alternatives they have. in addressing this.
And they're not going crazy. This is something that's real.
Right.
314-531-2003 is that number. And you say the calls to your hotline are up for stalking?
Yes, they're up 18%
Wow.
last year to this year.
Why is that?
Well, I think that probably the Me Too movement has something to do with that, because that's elevated attention and awareness around stalking, harassment, domestic violence, and sexual violence.
All right. Susan Kidder from Safe Connections, thank you so much. Always great to have you here.
Thank you.
All right. Ever wish?
All right. What's up, Hans? Good to see you. I checked out Hans's page. Hilarious. He likes to troll chats. It is so funny. You should go check out his Hans Diamond Ball, his page. Welcome to my show. Good to see you, sir. But Jack, yes. In certain things with DNA, it does happen over many years, but there are traumas that can happen over one generation. So if a mother is pregnant with a baby and she's experiencing high stress, the baby is immediately affected. Their brain shape is immediately affected. And then also just, again, their memories, ancestor memories do start encoding into offspring after one generation. But let's get back to the main to the discussion. So the warning signs of escalation that we just went through in stalking include increased frequency of contact, a lot of boundary testing, property damage, threats of self-harm or violence or to others. When a stalker shifts from basically the passive obsession to an aggressive pursuit of you, the behavior will typically follow a very dangerous compounding pattern. Now, this is in the case of physical stalking. So we went through cyber stalking. Now we're at physical stalking. So stalking behaviors will rarely remain static, and they'll typically intensify across very specific behavioral categories. So you have a frequency explosion where they move from occasional messages to dozens of texts, calls, or social media message interactions per day. Then you have method multiplication. So they'll shift away from using just one platform like email to using multiple channels simultaneously like text, workspace apps, or other mutual friends. The physical proximity, they'll transition from digital tracking to showing up at your home, your workplace, your gym, your favorite corner store, bodega, grocery store, whatever. And then they'll test their boundaries, purposely violating small boundaries or legal boundaries like restraining orders to see how you or law enforcement are going to respond to them. And then there's the information gathering flags where they're asking neighbors, coworkers, family members about your schedule, your routines, or even your relationships. They will commit property violations, trespassing on your property, leaving unsolicited gifts for you, stealing your mail, digging through your trash, or damaging your car or your home. And then there's manipulative threats, of course, where they'll threaten to harm themselves or, talk about suicide or basically to force you to respond, or threatening to ruin your relationship as well. So I have a chart here. Hold on, let me switch my OBS here. I have a chart that I'm going to pull up for you that I made. So let me pull that up for you. All right, so let me try to make this bigger. All right. So according to threat assessment frameworks used by law enforcement, stalking generally escalates through 3 distinct phases, and you have phase 1 right here. Phase 1 would be the hyperfixation obsession. So the frequent digital messaging, text messages, emails, DMs, constant monitoring of your social media, gathering information from your friends and family, and the unsolicited communication and contact. Now, phase 2 is the intrusion and control, which is the invasionary part of it, showing up to physically at your home or your job or your gym, hacking in your accounts or monitoring your technology, following you. Finding out where you went on your iMaps or your Google Maps, tracking your air tags and testing boundaries and observing your routine. So don't be a creature of habit if you suspect that you are being stalked. And then we move into phase 3, which is the high risk aggression, which is the threat. So direct or indirect threats of harm or violence, property damage, vandalism, theft, physical confrontation, stalking, coercive control, and manipulation. So the urgent risk factors for this type of behavior would be rejection, breakups, getting in a new relationship, the victim getting in a new relationship, someone taking legal action on someone, getting protection orders served, or you calling the police on someone. And then there's the stalker experiencing a personal crisis, job loss, or addiction. That can trigger them to behave this way as well, drug addiction. So if you are experiencing stalking, please seek help immediately. The National Stalking Resource Center is 1-855-4-VICTIM, 1-855-484-2846, or you can go to victimconnect.org or www.ncvc.org. So certain changes in the victim's life or the stalker's life can act as very catastrophic catalysts that will drastically accelerate the risk of physical violence as it pertains to stalking. So when they get a clear final rejection or the complete cutting off of communication and the stalker loses complete access to the victim, that can trigger violence. Getting in a new relationship, or serving the stalker with a protection order, having the police intervene, or even filing criminal charges on the stalker can lead to violence. So at these moments, you need to be the most heightened if you're concerned that you have a stalker. Then there's also life milestones that will trigger a violent outcome in a stalking situation. So things like major life updates that will signal that the victim is moving on, such as like buying a new home or getting a new job or graduating or whatever, moving away, will trigger violence sometimes. And then the stalker in their personal crises, them experiencing external stressors such as like a job loss or eviction or some kind of financial ruin, will sometimes remove their inhibitions and bring up the possibility for violence even more so. Urgent documentation is needed. Safety steps are needed. If you spot any of these escalation signs, move immediately from passive ignoring to active protection. So cease all contact. Do not reply, argue, or acknowledge them in any way. Any response, even a negative one, is seen by a stalker as a reward for their behavior. Document every single incident with the date, time, the exact behavior, and any witness names. Save your screenshots, save voicemail recordings, and store them in multiple secure cloud locations and hard copies. Hang on 1 minute, friends. All right. So yeah, just mentioned building the stalking log with all the pertinent information. You need to contact a tech audits to check your phone, your car, your bags for any sort of unauthorized tracking devices. And you need to keep regularly changing all your password credentials and set all of your socials to maximum privacy and use two-factor authentication for all of your accounts. Alert any trusted neighbors or family, which will build security for you. Alert HR at your workplace, but close family as well, so they do not inadvertently give out your information to someone that might be information seeking. And like I said, if you are experiencing anything like this, contact the National Center for Victims of Crime, and they will guide you through contacting your local emergency services for very personalized planning. So now we're going to talk about a little bit about the impact on victims. The effects often extend far beyond fear, unfortunately. The victims may begin changing their routines. This is life-changing because they're going to want to avoid social events. They'll limit their online activity. They'll question their own perceptions and their own sanity. They'll start to become very hypervigilant and experiencing anxiety or sleep disruptions because their brain is watching everything that's moving in their environment and their surroundings. One of the most difficult aspects is the uncertainty for the victims. Many of them spend enormous time and energy wondering if they're imagining all of this or if it can ever be stopped. And a lot of them feel incredibly hopeless at times. The uncertainty itself can be psychologically exhausting. So let's look at a video here.
You describe stalking as murder in slow motion. Why do you use this phrase?
I describe stalking and coercive control, the two together, as murder in slow motion, because you get a drip, drip, drip.
Wow.
Before the most serious event. And often with the murders, when you look back, you see so many opportunities to intervene and prevent. One of the cases that really changed my perception and changed my life was the murder of Claire Burnell in Harvey Nichols in 2005. This was someone who was stalking Claire, was fixated and obsessed with her and intrusive in her life and would not take no for an answer. And she was terrified. She tried to do everything. You go to the police because you think that they're going to understand the behaviour and do something about it. But our officers didn't understand that it was stalking. They had no training on stalking, no training on fixation, obsession, and what to do. So when he was being interviewed by an officer who was just off probation, he was saying things like, I just want to let her know how much I love her. Come on, you've been in love before. I just want her to know. I just want to get back with her. Come on, officer. It's not a big deal. I just want to see her again, and I'm just trying to make my case. He was saying things like that, and she, the female officer, was thinking, sounds plausible. But actually what they missed was how terrifying this was for Claire, that she was leaving on the tube and he would just suddenly appear. He would block her exit off the tube. And on one of the last occasions, he didn't just block her exit, he stroked her cheek, moved closer to her so that they were nose to nose. And he said, if you report me to the police, I will kill you. Claire then manages to get home. She was living with a friend who also worked in Harvey Nichols. And that friend said, you must tell the head of security at Harvey Nichols. And so she did. The head of security at Harvey Nichols did a really good job, started watching Michael Pesch, started the disciplinary process, created a whole file on his behaviour that would eventually lead to him being suspended and then fired. But when he was fired and he was led out of Harvey Nichols in cuffs, what they didn't understand was how angry he was, and he wanted revenge on Claire. So when he's bailed, the first person he wants to go and see is Claire. He gets a weapon because he's ex-military, and he's a security guard that works in Harvey Nichols. And then he goes in through a side door on September the 13th because he knows the security layout. Security have all been told he mustn't enter the building. And at 20 to 8, when Claire's looking at one of her colleagues, she worked on a cosmetic counter, and she's looking at the time and saying, we're almost done. He comes up behind her, shoots her once in the back of the head, 3 times in the face. And then he turns the weapon on himself.
You describe stalking.
Hi guys, it is Tamara. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Welcome back. Today I just want to talk about psychotic stalking again, but I'm going to give you some characteristics of these psychotic stalkers and what that looks like, okay? So we're not going to waste any time. Let's just go ahead and jump in. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. For those who are subscribed and participating, thank you so much. And for those who are new, I encourage you to go ahead and guys, is that they have a preconceived or grandiose position. Stalkers here, guys. So not just your typical sociopathic or narcissistic personalities. I'm talking about the psychotic stalker. So this individual has a disconnect from reality, okay? And I talk about that in this video up here that I did about psychosis and schizophrenia, and I kind of break it down. Well, those individuals have a disconnect from reality in the sense that really what they believe is what their mind tells them. So they may be delusional, meaning that they have a firm belief. That firm belief, right? That's like a personal conviction. It's almost like a religion to them. That delusion may say, I'm in love with that person and that person's in love with me. That delusion may say, I'm in love with that person and I can get them to love me. Even though the reality is that if we don't have chemistry and if I don't know you or care to know you or I'm married, right? Whether I say it or not, doesn't mean that I'm interested in you. And so, you know, that individual, because they are disconnected from reality, they don't understand that there's those parameters, there's some barriers there that you're going to have to break through. And you can't just make somebody want you, right? You can't just stalk somebody and harass them because you feel like it. And so, you know, these psychotic stalkers tend to have that disconnect from reality. They can't understand that there's some things that they're going to have to try to work out or that need to be worked out or that don't connect or doesn't make sense. And so you're not going to get anywhere. They can't reason like that. All right. So they have a disconnect from reality. The next one, guys, is that they have a preconceived or grandiose position of importance. So, you know, they have this position that says, if I just do A, B, and C, I'm going to get that, right? Or if I do 1, 2, and 3, this is how it's going to conclude. That my conclusion is going to be the way that I want it. So they almost have this preconceived or grandiose position of importance. They don't understand, again, that there's a lot of things in between that need to be worked out before you can just claim somebody, right? Or before you can just stop them because you feel like it. There's no ability to reason. There's no ability to be logical, rational, understanding, right? And no matter how many times you may try to rationalize or explain something or even show compassion that that person is that ill, it doesn't matter. They still have it on their mind to do what they set out to do in the first place. It's just who they are. Right? So, you know, that individual has a preconceived or grandiose position of self-importance. All right. The next thing that I want you guys to keep in mind is that there is an obsessional component to the psychotic stalker. They obsess over the same thing, whether it's your photo, your voice, a voicemail, a video, a post you wrote online, a Facebook post you what's the word I'm looking for? Posted to the internet, right? It may be a family portrait. It may be a memory of you guys going out for a date, whatever. You know, they have this obsessional component. They obsess and they obsess some more. And no matter how many times you say no, 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 they're still going to obsess because they're psychotic. And that's just who they are. They can't help that. They are not well. If we're talking about a stalker who's a sociopath, a narcissist, or a psychopath, then the story changes, right? You know, they know exactly what they're doing. They get a thrill out of what they're doing. But a psychotic stalker or an individual who may have some kind of brief psychosis or may have some kind of grandiosity or some kind of, again, detachment from reality because of a mental illness, you know, then you're dealing with an individual that just becomes obsessive and you can't move them off of that. Now, the compulsion, you know, if you think about this in terms of OCD, the compulsion is I have to get close to that person I'm stalking. I have to get close to that person that I want. I have to get close to that thing that reminds me of the thing that I want, right? So basically what a compulsion is, guys, and I'm going to put the definition right over here for you. The compulsion is an attempt to reduce the anxiety that the obsession causes, okay? The compulsion is to reduce the anxiety that the obsession causes. So if you're the obsession, right, and they stalk you because you're the obsession, their compulsion is to try to get a hold of you again. They have to do something, right? They have to grab onto you, do something, right, in some capacity to reduce the anxiety that the obsession causes, okay? The next one, guys, is that they try to use a hook to reel you in, and that could be money, a compliment. What else could it be, guys? It could be charm and glib. It could be, what's the word? Some kind of sexual rendezvous or affair. They're going to do something to try to reel you in. So keep that in mind. A psychotic stalker or a non-psychotic stalker, right? They're going to reel you in and they're going to figure out how to do it. Now, a psychotic stalker can try to reel you in. It's a hook, all right? The next and the last thing, guys, is that they lack insight into their own behaviors and their thoughts and their feelings. They don't know how to connect these things right here because they're not well enough to do so. And so it takes a lot of psychotherapy, a lot of medication sometimes to get psychotic stalkers in a place where they can heal and understand that what they're doing is not okay, that there is a problem here. So, you know, this is a really tough topic. I'm going to post in the description box below the video that I did last weekend. And I'm also going to post some previous videos that I did that may be helpful to you. And I will come back to this topic, guys. We'll continue to talk about this. Let me know in the comment section below what you want to hear about this, because I will definitely do more videos for you. Thank you so much for being with me.
Welcome to the Susie Lampley Trust, which runs the National Stalking Helpline and the London Stalking Support Service. We offer a specialist psychological advocacy service because stalking causes all sorts of psychological impacts. Your feelings about stalking might change over time. Early on, you may feel confused, rising irritation, or even compassion, and hope that if you respond to the stalker, that they will then leave you alone. However, as time goes on and they persist, you may feel violated and a loss of control as the stalking continues in a process akin to psychological terrorism. Over time, many people who are stalked show signs of post-traumatic stress, including becoming more alert to possible threat and feeling on edge. You may become down, withdrawn or angry, and have physical sensations of fear or anxiety, like being on red alert, trembling, sweating, or feeling sick. These symptoms can affect your day-to-day life, personally and professionally. You might notice that you stop doing so well in your studies or your job, and that in turn can make you lose confidence, feel more depressed or hopeless. You may have tried a number of strategies to cope, like changing your routine, cutting people off, or self-medicating. You may feel like you're no longer the same person you were. You might still feel traumatized after the stalking has stopped. We believe in some key principles. Firstly, you are not alone and have the right to get help. The National Stalking Helpline offers practical advice and information.
Okay. Let me move into this video right here.
Hypervigilance, explained by ducks. Duck sits by pond, wants to relax. Brain says, better watch for geese. Duck puts on headphones. Brain says, no. What if another duck calls you? What if they get mad you didn't hear? Duck tries to read. Eyes on page, ears everywhere, every ripple, every honk, every shadow in the water. Other ducks splash and laugh. Duck scans each one, just in case. Feels heart flap faster, even when nothing's wrong. It's exhausting, like guarding the pond 24/7, even when the pond is safe. Other ducks say, chill. Duck says, I would, if my brain let me. Wise frog says, your brain learned danger once. Now it sees it everywhere. Safety isn't just outside the nest, it's inside your feathers too. Still scanning, still learning to rest. Still a good duck. Hypervigilance, explained by ducks. Duck sits by pond, wants to relax. Brains. CPTSD, explained by ducks. Tiny duck grows up in a storm. Not once, not twice, but every day. Loud honks, cold water, no safe log to rest on. Duck learns, always be ready, always watch, never relax. Now grown, pond is calm, but duck still flinches at sudden splashes. Still feels one wrong flap equals danger. Other ducks say, it's over, just move on. Ducks say, my feathers remember storms you never saw. Duck avoids, duck overthinks, duck shuts down, because the body still thinks the storm is here. This is complex PTSD, not just one bad honk, but years of quacks, too loud for a small duck. Wise frog says, your pond can change, safe ducks exist, one feather at a time. Duck nods, tries resting without guilt, tries trusting the quiet. Still healing, still growing, still a good duck. CPTSD, explained by ducks.
You're not bad. You're still a good duck if you're going through all that. All right. So stalking is an ongoing form of psychological terrorism. It is what it is. Unlike a single traumatic event, the impact of stalking on victims is chronic, it's compounding, and it utterly destroys their sense of safety in every single area of life. Because the behavior is unpredictable and repetitive, victims are forced into a state of permanent anticipation, never knowing when or how the next intrusion is going to happen. I am telling you from personal experience. The psychological and mental health toll is real. The continuous stress of being targeted alters a victim's psychological well-being. It alters the brain shape. And data compiled by organizations like Stalking Prevention Awareness and Resource Center, or SPARC, highlights very severe mental health outcomes. Severe hypervigilance is where a victim will remain in a permanent fight or flight mode, and they're constantly checking their mirrors, looking over their shoulders, scanning crowds. The PTSD symptoms won't go away. Up to 8 to 10 stalking victims will exhibit symptoms of PTSD, the disorder, not moments of stress, but the disorder where it doesn't stop, which will include like flashbacks, nightmares, and panic attacks, which leads to deep self-doubt. Because the stalkers often gaslight the victims, causing them to initially question their own reality or blame themselves for provoking the behavior. They could develop agoraphobia and become a hermit and stay isolated. The fear of running into the stalker causes many of the victims to stop leaving their homes entirely, which creates profound social isolation. The human body cannot survive long-term panic without breaking down. You will get sick, you will get cancers, other diseases, and there are academic studies that have tracked things like that via PubMed and the National Institute of Health, which have listed out widespread symptoms, like chronic exhaustion. So having deep sleep disturbances and insomnia caused by late night threats or middle of the night anxiety. They'll have psychosomatic stress or somatic stress, where they'll have frequent tension headaches, heart palpitations, shortness of breath, and elevated blood pressure. Their gut can be affected. They can't eat, or they overeat. Severe weight fluctuations can happen. Ulcers. I developed an ulcer. IBS. Being driven, and that happens because you're being driven by a nervous system that is constantly in stress. The reason why it hits the gastrointestinal system is because the primitive part of the brain is still wired for you to defecate or pee when you are running from a predator or something that wants to take your life, just like many other animals do. So that GI will become affected. Prolonged cortisol spikes weaken the immune system, making the victim more susceptible to autoimmune diseases, the flare-ups of it, and infections. Stress leads to the norepinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol constantly being elevated, and in a constant elevated state that is toxic for your body, and therefore different diseases come forward. Stalking is highly disruptive to the victim's livelihood, which can have an indirect economic damage. Sometimes that's the stalker's goal. I think that is partially the goal of mine. The career disruption, although I'm ungovernable and you'll never control me, but nearly half of cyber stalking victims will report negative consequences at work, and roughly 1 in 6 will lose their jobs entirely due to their attendance dropping, or workplace disruptions that are directly caused by the stalker, or because this person's the victim's having panic attacks and breakdowns at work. Then you have that forced relocation that comes from an economic hardship. Approximately 1 in 7 stalking victims are forced to move to a new apartment or city to hide from their perpetrator, which generates massive unexpected moving costs, rental costs. And then the victims will regularly spend substantial amounts of out-of-pocket costs on legal fees for protective orders, home security systems, cameras, private investigators, and whatnot. And of course, there is social and relational erosion that happens. Stalkers rarely impact the victim alone. It does radiate outward into their entire support system, even their children. And I think that's one thing the person stalking me just didn't care about, was the bleed over onto my children. And that goes to show you how sick and twisted these people really are, is that they don't even care about a child being an indirect victim. Trust evaporates. The victims will find it extremely difficult to build new romantic relationships or friendships because you don't trust who you're meeting, as they become intensely suspicious of a newcomer's motives. I can tell you that from personal experience. Friends, family, and coworkers can become the targets themselves as the stalker seeks information, making them a collateral burden, leading to tension and strained relationships. And then basic lifestyle choices like just going for a jog or using social media or going to your favorite restaurant have to be entirely abandoned to minimize risk, so you have loss of freedom there. So when it comes to protecting yourself, if someone experiences repeated unwanted attention or you think you are being stalked, document these interactions. Preserve all the evidence you can and strengthen your digital security, and avoid responding to repeated unwanted contact when it's appropriate and when you can. Inform trusted friends or family of your concerns. If the behavior escalates or causes fear, you may have to contact the law enforcement or someone else that's qualified in legal professions to understand your available options. And this response really depends highly on the circumstances and the professional guidance of the help that you seek out.
What if there's no violence, but an ex won't leave you alone? They're showing up at your office. They're showing up at your house. They're texting you 200 times at night.
Sweet says we're describing her.
We
ex.
call that stalking.
I got
stalking
one of those too.
Is a pattern of conduct.
That's what's happening
number
in my
one,
life.
Directed at a specific individual. Element number 2, with no legitimate purpose. That's element 3. That would cause an objectively reasonable person substantial emotional distress. Stalking injunctions require 2 very clear things. Number 1, they require you to tell that person to stop. You must have a clear message. Stop calling me. Stop contacting me. I don't want to deal with you anymore. Once that happens, you should no longer communicate with that individual, because if you do, you are engaging with them and
Right.
you are setting yourself up for
gratifying
failure for a
them,
stalking
giving them
injunction.
reward.
Once you tell them to stop, there must be a pattern. A pattern means more than one. So for example, if they text you one time after you told them not to, you don't have enough. But if they start showing up at your house, text you 200 times in one go, text you all hours of the night, then you can file for an injunction for stalking. Next, there must be no legitimate purpose. If it's a parent that just wants to see their kid and they keep texting someone saying, let me see my kid, that's a legitimate person. But if it's just someone calling you names or abusing you online or following you through cyber stalking, there's no legitimate purpose there. What if there's no violence, but an ex
Okay.
won't leave you alone?
Let me pull up the
They're
next
showing-
video.
Hey, Jim, so what should you do if someone is cyber stalking you?
The first thing you want to do is make sure that you document everything. And there's actually some apps that you can use. There's one app that I know of. I'm not advertising for it, but it's called DocuSafe, and it's really an easy way to document emails, texts, pictures, all of that sort of thing, so that it's basically, you're compiling evidence. You want to think about changing your routines as far as when and how you travel to work, that sort of thing. And if that person is continuing to stalk you, then you might want to look at whether there's some kind of a tracking device on your car or even on your phone. You want to cut off contact with them completely. And if for some reason you can't do that, then you have to really just limit contact with them. Also, it might be good to contact the credit reporting bureaus and put a fraud alert, letting them know that somebody is cyber stalking you.
Hey, Jim, so what should you do if someone is cyber stalking you?
The first thing you want to do is make sure that you document everything. And there's
What are the 3 rules of surveillance, and why do you need to know them? How can it keep you safer? How can it keep you from being followed and, heaven forbid, attacked in your home or office? I'm going to share it with you right now. My name is Jason Hansen. I'm a former CIA officer, and I'm the New York Times bestselling author of Spy Secrets Can Save Your Life. My goal is to keep you safer and more protected in the unpredictable world that we live in. So the 3 rules of surveillance. How to make sure you're not being followed. Well, the 3 rules of surveillance are, first, an accident. Meaning, rule number 1 is if you see somebody, let's say you're driving home, and let's say you're walking, and you see the same person, and you go home or whatever, okay, I saw somebody, and I saw him again, okay, big deal, right? Maybe not the world's biggest coincidence, okay? Well, rule 1 again is an accident, meaning maybe that person, we just happen to bump into each other. Maybe we work in the same office tower and he's new and I didn't notice him. Or maybe I live in small town USA and we're a town of only 500 and somebody just moved in, type of thing. So if you think somebody's following you, you see the same person twice, could just be an accident, right? Well, what happens if you see him a second time? Well, coincidence. So I know they're close, but again, these are the official 3 rules of surveillance. So if you see him again, like multiple times, be like, oh, okay, I saw this guy here and it wasn't just my office where I bumped into him or my office building in close proximity. I saw him over here too when I was shopping in the Walmart. Okay, that's just a coincidence that, I saw him in my office, maybe once or twice, and I saw him at Walmart. Well, if you see him in third place, that's what we call enemy action. First time could be an accident. Second time, coincidence, because they happen sometimes. And 3 times is enemy action. So if you bumped into him in your office building, if you saw him at Walmart, and then you see the same guy when you're picking up your dry cleaning or when you're going to the gym, well, that's probably not a coincidence. That's probably not an accident. That's probably enemy action. And what I mean by that is you're under hostile surveillance. Somebody's trying to follow you, and you don't know why. Meaning, are they following you because they're trying to get to somebody related to you, maybe a wife or a child? Are they trying to get to you? Are they going to kidnap you? Are they going to hold you for ransom? So unfortunately, when it comes to hostile surveillance, is you don't know when you first spawn them, what is the reason they're surveilling me? What is the attack they want to do? Which is, of course, why you want to pay attention to your surroundings. And one of the kind of most famous examples of this that ended badly was the Aldo Moro. He was a former prime minister of Italy. He, of course, had bodyguards. He had 5 bodyguards with him, but he was very predictable. Now, I'm not the former prime minister of Italy, so most of us don't have that level of threats, but he did. And even though he had those threats, his team took the same route every single day. They didn't vary. They were incredibly predictable. So what did these terrorists do who wanted to get him? Well, they, of course, surveilled him. They saw where he did every day, and they realized, guess what? It's going to be easy to stage an ambush because this guy takes the same road every single day, and it's a small road. It's not like it's on a 10-lane highway, so it's going to be easy to block off. Then, of course, once they realized his predictable pattern, they said, okay, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Well, they staged a flower truck at one area right before he came into the kill zone, the ambush zone. And in the ambush zone, they had the terrorists sitting in airline pilot dress, right? So they wouldn't stand up. They could stand at a bus bench and sit there and, hey, these guys are just looking at the bus or looking to take the bus so they go to the airport so they can fly their planes kind of thing. So they didn't stand there with their Uzis out looking like terrorists. They, of course, did have Uzis, but they were hidden with all their suitcases, everything, posing as airline crew. So when Aldo Moro and his security team, they went in there, the guy in the flower truck tipped off the terrorist. Here he comes. A car blocked him off. And what did these guys do? Well, they jumped up, they took out their machine guns, and they killed everybody, all of his security personnel, except him, and they kidnapped him. It went down very quick. It went down very fast. Now, when you read the history books and look back, and people say, oh, we saw this, we saw the surveillance, it added up. There were tips that somebody was watching him, but people just dismissed him. People didn't take him seriously. So there was the 3 rules of surveillance in action, meaning, okay, we saw this guy was an accident, then we saw him again, maybe a coincidence, then we saw him again. Enemy action is about to go down. So how can you apply this? What can you do? Well, of course, have your head up, but you can run what we in the spy world call a surveillance detection route, SDR for short. Easiest way to do it is just start making turns, meaning if you ever think you're being followed home, don't go straight home, because criminals have been known to spot somebody with a fat diamond ring at the grocery store and say, hey, that woman's got a fat diamond ring. We're going to follow her home, and we're going to do home invasion, which is a true story, unfortunately. So if you think you're being followed home, well, take a left, take a right, take random turns, and if that car keeps following you, then you know you're being followed. Call 911, don't go home. If you're on foot and you think you're being followed in a store or the mall, just start going to random areas. Does that person follow you around? Go talk to a security guard, go talk to a manager, have them walk you to your car. So having your head up, you can see, hey, is it accident? Is it coincidence? Do I have enemy action? Have I seen this same guy 5 different times over the last 2 days? Well, guess.
Don't look like easy prey.
What? You're being followed. You need to be alert. You need to vary your patterns. So most likely, unless you are a high net worth individual, a politician, a public figure, you're not going to have people who've been surveilling you for weeks. Most likely, it's going to be opportunity crime, meaning you're the person who's standing in line at Subway or you're standing in line in the restaurant and you're wearing your $100,000 Rolex watch and some criminal happens to be in there saying, hey, that guy's rich. I'm going to follow him home. I knew a guy. He was at a fancy country club. The criminals sat out in front of that country club, would watch the cars come out, follow the cars home because they knew if people belonged to this, whatever it was, $250,000 a year, uber wealthy country club, they're going back to money. And there was a home invasion. Thankfully, he was okay. So hopefully you learned a thing or two. Hopefully you keep your head up. Hopefully you pay attention before you go home to make sure you're not being followed and stop taking random turns. And if there's anything else, if there's anything else I can do for you, please let me know. Also, please subscribe to this channel. I have a ton of videos that I promise will save your life and have saved people's lives because I have the letters, I have the wonderful emails, the kind emails they've sent me. Also, if you want more safety tips, definitely click on below. You'll learn a tremendous amount of information. Again, I'm former CIA officer Jason Hansen. My goal is to keep you safe. God bless you, God bless your family, and God bless our country.
All right. And then we got one third to last video here coming up. All right. Use strong, unique passwords. Enable 2-factor authentication. Keep your software updated. Use secure websites. Cover your webcam. Be cautious of phishing scams. Adjust your privacy settings, secure your Wi-Fi network, use antivirus software, regularly back up your data, and be careful what you download. All right.
Do you know what to do in case your identity has been stolen? Number 1, go to identitytheft.gov. This is the FTC's website where you can go through their process and get a personalized recovery plan. They will even help you by pre-filling in the right forms. Number 2, after of course you report any fraudulent accounts and activities to your financial institution, you should contact one of the 3 credit bureaus and ask for something called the Extended Fraud Alert. For the next 7 years, if anyone tries to open an account in your name, they must contact you first. Do you know what to do in case you're
Good tip.
Identity theft happens, but here are 5 ways to protect your information. Read your credit card and bank statements to look up transactions you don't recognize. Know your payment due dates. If a bill doesn't show up, check it out. Review your health insurance statements. Make sure the claims match the care you got. Shred documents with personal and financial information. Review your credit report regularly at annualcreditreport.com. Plus, learn more at ftc.gov/ID theft. Identity theft happens, but
All right. Okay. The best way to deal with a stalker is to completely cut off all communication, systematically preserve every single piece of evidence, and create a comprehensive safety plan with law enforcement and local advocacy networks. Stalkers thrive on control and managing. That means that any engagement you give them, even an angry response or a pleading text, will act as a behavioral reward that fuels more obsession. Because cyber stalking and physical stalking frequently intertwine with each other, security strategies have to be deployed across both your digital and your physical environments. So the immediate steps for that, for both types of stalking, regardless of whether the behavior appears primarily online or in person, there are safety groups like Stalking Prevention Awareness and Resource Center, SPARC, which recommend immediate non-negotiable baselines. 1, send a clear message that says no and then disengage. Give exactly 1 explicit, unambiguous statement. Do not contact me again in any way. Any further contact will be reported to law enforcement. And after this, you never reply ever again. Build a dynamic stalking log. Never delete the messages, comments, or the call history. Document every single occurrence using an organized log containing in folders. Have the dates, the times, the screenshots, exact URLs, descriptions, and any witness info, and back this log up so you can secure it. All right. Or put it on an encrypted external hard drive. Notify your key network. So your employer, your security, your HR, your family, any trusted neighbors, and give them a physical description of the stalker and their vehicle so they don't accidentally compromise you by giving away any personal data. Now, if the perpetrator is utilizing digital channels, apps, or any smart hardware to monitor you, you need to implement a very urgent digital overhaul. So activate your multi-factor authentication in your email, in your financial institutions, with your socials. App-based authenticators are better than SMS-based codes because if they are seeing your text messages, that defeats the purpose if you're doing an SMS code. Because your SIM card could be targeted. Stalkers can plant hidden keyloggers or tracking files. So update all your devices, operating systems immediately. Keep them updated with your anti-malware software and cover any built-in cameras when you're not using them. If you suspect deep compromise, get a new device entirely. Disable all of your location sharing services. That includes your Bluetooth settings, your GPS data across any app. Any app could be using your location services. And just avoid using the free public Wi-Fi without a VPN on it. Routinely scan your clothing, your bags, or your car for any sort of tracking devices, such as AirTags or any Android trackers, to expose any rogue AirTags or tile trackers. If the threat is physical, focus heavily on fortifying your immediate spaces and verify your don't let them be able to verify your routine. So change your patterns, vary your identifiable patterns. Don't walk the same path to work every day, or drive the same route to the grocery store. Alter the times and the exact streets that you use. And just try to avoid, during this time, scheduling any reoccurring public appointments that the perpetrator could easily, anticipate you doing. Again, install your home security alarms, high quality deadbolts, even bars across the doors and windows if you want. You can get exterior motion activated lighting, a guard dog that is not friendly with strangers. And if you're going to do cameras, you do have to legally display security signs in your front yard or your window. But transition your incoming sensitive mail to a secure P.O. box so no one can look in your mailbox, or use a commercial mail facility rather than your residential box. You can request an escort to walk you to and from your car. Workplace colleagues are usually more than happy to do this, and assistants will be more than happy to filter your incoming phone calls or screen your emails and gather evidence without the stalker ever having direct access to you. But stalking is a crime in all 50 states under federal laws. So if you choose to seek a protection order or file a police report, present your organized evidence file directly to the law enforcement officers to demonstrate that you have a sustained escalating course of conduct from your stalker. Use automated, validated screening tools such as the Stalking and Harassment Assessment and Risk Profile, that's called SHARP, to build a personalized risk assessment profile for yourself. And if you are experiencing any active stalking, just reach out to the Victim Connect Resource Center. And again, that number is 1-855-4-VICTIM. 1-855-484-2846. Or you can call the local domestic violence hotline, which is 1-800-799-7233 for immediate crisis support. And it's very confidential. Of course, if you're in immediate danger, you want to call 911. Yeah. I think I'm seeing a suggestion for a raid already. Who is Adam Sandler's spaceman? Harumph. Who is that, cue ball? All right. We are here at the end. You've made it 3.5 hours with me. Congratulations. You done good. Just to get to my closing monologue before I send it to this raid that Q has been so helpful in providing. I don't know why that pinned. Weird. Most people understand that relationships require consent. Oh, Q says, I wish a nigga would. Think they're gonna cream up my ass. You didn't hear me saying I have a stalker. Most people understand that relationships require consent. Friendship requires consent. Communication requires consent. Attention requires consent. And when those boundaries are respected, society functions well. When they're ignored, obsession replaces connection. Understanding stalking does not mean that you are living in fear. It's about recognizing patterns and me helping you feel more empowered to do so, especially as women. Psychology doesn't excuse harmful behavior. Oh, this person has a disorder or a personality disorder or is a psychopath or narcissistic or they went through a lot of trauma. That doesn't excuse any of it. But it can explain how distorted thinking, fixation, entitlement, and poor emotional regulation sometimes combine into a persistent, unwanted conduct. The more we understand these patterns, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves, our children, and support other victims, and encourage people who recognize these tendencies in themselves to seek out the appropriate mental health care before their behavior escalates into something they can never undo or take back. Knowledge is not paranoia. Knowledge is preparation. And understanding the mind is often the first step towards preventing harm. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Thirst Trap News. Tonight, Saturdays, we're going to do Psych Saturdays. Tomorrow, I will be covering the Islamic Caliphates on my human origins, our journey through ancient human world powers. We started in Sumer, and now we are past the Vatican, and now we are at the Islamic Caliphates. Tomorrow is a subscriber-only show. I will be in lingerie, have a drink and a smoke with you guys, and I'll have to send my daughter out on a walk while I smoke or something, walk the dog. But it was good to see you guys. Glad you were with me here on Saturday. Let me go ahead and prepare that raid. Where's my file folder? Here we go. Thirst Trap News Media, and there is my song. All right. How do you subscribe? So let's see. Let me share my browser. So to subscribe, you're going to go over to Rumble. Okay. And then you're going to go to my page. And then you are going to... Oh, shit. Where is that? I think there'll be an alert on the video. To subscribe. Those are just all my videos. I'm not sure. Good question. I will find that out. But I'm already up to 773 followers. It's pretty damn cool. Okay. So, without further ado, I bid you good night. Enjoy.